I'd like to call to order the March 25th, 2025 meeting of the Select Board. It's 7 p.m. I'll just quickly run through our proposed agenda for this evening. We're going to have a brief community input for what you normally do at the beginning. We're going to then have a joint meeting with the Board of Health. We're going to move on to a electric company pole location hearing, then a joint meeting with the Transfer Station Action Committee, town meeting discussion, then the discussion of the Carlisle Police Unit local contract, town administrator report, and then appointments, warrants and minutes, liaison reports, and then we'll have further community input at the end. So I'd like to call to order the meeting we have 4 members present. Note that Barney Arnold is on.
That's her.
Barney, are you on the phone? If you are, please speak up.
You're muted, Barney.
You're muted. Oh, it is Barney. Okay, well, when you have a moment, if you would make yourself known, if you can do that. Otherwise, we're going to consider that, we'll have at least 4 members present. Okay, to start, we do community input. If there's anyone in the public who wants to address the select board, you can address me. Just state your name and your address. We typically allow 1 minute. I sometimes allow 2 for comments. This can be on any subject. And we'd appreciate if you just keep your comments concise. Is there anyone in the audience? Seeing none, I will move online. Is there anyone online who wants to make a comment or has questions for the select board? Okay, seeing none.
This is Barney. Can you
Hey,
hear me
Barney.
now?
You have a question, state your address.
Did we need to do a roll
By
call?
Low Road. No, anyway, can you hear me now? It's Barney Arnold.
We do. And so now that you are online, we're going to
Okay,
do a
great.
roll call vote here for the meeting.
Okay.
So we'll do it alphabetically. Go ahead, Barney.
Arnold, I.
Model I.
Reed, aye.
Snell, aye.
Triola, aye.
All right, we got it. All right, so we're all present, all 5 members. All right. So it's approximately 7:05, and I'd like to invite the Board of Health to, if they wanted to, if you want to come forward, or, whatever you.
Meeting room, but like, so.
No, it's great.
really is
It's
helpful.
great. And I think our microphones seem to work pretty well now, so people can hear. But if you want to call your meeting to
Yeah,
order.
so we actually have all of our 5. We'll do a roll call. Collins, aye. Erickson, aye.
Keating, aye. Mariano, aye.
Wall, aye.
Excellent. Perfect. Well, we appreciate you coming and attending and participating, really. This, I think, got started because we are working on a town administrator bylaw, and we had heard that there was some concerns about that, and Linda had suggested that we through Linda at least, set up a joint meeting as well as invite some guests to attend. And so I think if you're willing to do that, let's have them speak.
That's
Perfect.
way to go. So,
All right.
I'm sorry if I moved the chairs that you want to sit in, but I figured you might be more. Do you want me to move the chairs back?
It doesn't make
Okay.
any difference. We just need to
I would just come closer.
It would be helpful
need to
because
see
they
the
can
power.
see.
No, actually, let them, we can bring the other chairs. Okay, that's fine.
I got it.
Oh, just
How about
smaller
if you just slide the tape over here?
That way we can see the audience.
It's going to be on the screen, but they also have cameras so that the people looking remotely can
Oh,
see
so you
it.
want us to stay here?
It's preferable if you
Then we
could.
will.
Okay,
It's up to you.
We'll just use smaller chairs.
yes.
All right.
We'll know for next time.
So welcome. If
Perfectly.
happy to
Thanks
have you.
very
If you wanna
much.
Please introduce yourself and we
Certainly. Thank you very much for having us. My name is Cheryl Sabara. I am the Executive Director and Senior Staff Attorney for the Massachusetts Association of Health Boards, and I am here with my colleague, Mike Hugo. You can
And
introduce.
I'm Mike Hugo, and I am the Director of Strategies and Government Relations for Mass Association of Health Boards.
And we were asked to come before the board and talk a little bit about the legal authority of boards of health, how they get their authority, where it's from, and basically provide some information on what their statutory and regulatory obligations are, and look at some case law and some historical information about how we got to where we are now as local boards of health in Massachusetts. So I'm gonna talk about the legal authority, and then Mike is gonna talk about some recent legislation that was just passed by the legislature in November of 2024 that has some pretty broad implications for the work of the Board of Health and some standards that are gonna need to be met by boards of health. So I will start. Is someone gonna just turn the slides?
That's me.
Great, next slide. As we attorneys like to do, we have a disclaimer here to tell you that we do not represent the town of Carlisle. You are ably represented by your municipal attorney. We are providing this information for educational purposes. It's not legal advice. Next slide. So a little bit about us. We were established in 1982 by the Conservation Law Foundation. They are a nonprofit legal entity that were getting a lot of questions on boards of health and laws that pertained to boards of health. So we ended up being created through this foundation. And we provide legal education, technical assistance, and training. We have three trainings that are coming up in April and May. It's the certificate program for Board of Health members, and staff usually come to those as well. Next slide. So when we look at the main chapter in Massachusetts that addresses public health and public health law is Chapter 111. And when you're looking at public health law, and you look first to the federal law, because that is the law that trumps everything. So the federal law sets minimum standards. I know, I'm sorry I used that word. So it used to not be controversial.
He certainly thinks it trumps everything.
So they set minimum standards, the federal government, and then states, actually, the authority to regulate the public health, safety, and welfare is left to the states in the United States. And in Massachusetts, our legislature delegated most of the authority to enact reasonable health regulations to local boards of health. So local boards of health are charged with protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the residents. It's the police power, which doesn't usually sit really well with residents because they don't think about the Board of Health as having the same police power that fire and police have, but they do. And the courts in Massachusetts have consistently upheld the authority of boards of health to protect public health. And they've done it, you can see it's at the expense of an individual's freedom and the right to engage in business. So we're constantly utilizing this balancing test between an individual's freedom and the need to protect public health and the right to engage in business and the need to protect public health. And this was a huge issue 25 years ago when we were enacting local regulations banning smoking in restaurants and bars. It was a huge issue, and this is a case that put that issue in perspective. Next slide, please. So, and when you look at the cases from the Supreme Judicial Court, which is our highest court, you will see what they have said throughout the years, that Board of Health regulations stand on the same footing as a town bylaw, as a state statute, or a state regulation. Rational presumptions, all rational presumptions are made in favor of the validity of that regulation. And the case that really hits home on this specific issue is the Arthur D. Little case back in the 80s in Cambridge, where Arthur D. Little was coming into the city to build a chemical warfare plant. They had all their approvals from everyone, and the Cambridge Board of Health, they have a commissioner form, but he operates just like a Board of Health. enacted a regulation that prohibited the manufacturing of chemical warfare weapons in the city. There were three reports that were published to look at what the actual danger would be for the residents. And one was commissioned by the federal government because there were federal funds involved, one by the city and one by Arthur T. Little. All three of them came back essentially saying that to a 99% degree of certainty, there will not be any danger to the residents. The court upheld that regulation as reasonable because they said they were not going to substitute their judgment for the judgment of the Board of Health. If the Board of Health felt that that 1% was sufficiently dangerous to the residents of Cambridge, they weren't going to substitute their judgment. Now, I say that because that is a very extreme case. And I always tell my members that just because you can doesn't mean you should. But that just gives you an inkling of the wide latitude and discretion that courts in Massachusetts have given to boards of health. Next slide.
There we go.
So when I said just because you can doesn't mean you should, there are certain considerations that I believe a board should look to. First, you want to know whether there's any preemption. Does the federal or state law prevent you from acting? And then you want to look at what the actual risk is. And frequently boards regulate when they're looking at folks that can't really regulate well or protect themselves. For instance, youth. A lot of our tobacco laws are to prevent youth from being exposed. Elderly, those with special needs. These are some of the populations that we're looking at. Or are you just dealing with something that may be a private cause of action? One neighbor's fighting with another neighbor over something. Does that rise to the level or not? So that's something, these are the limitations and the considerations. Next slide, please. Next slide. I already said that. So other factors that you're going to want to consider are the following. And I won't go through them all, but I'd like to give you an example of a Board of Health that was thinking of passing a regulation, and again, this was about 20 years ago, to ban the use of cell phones in cars. Public health issue? Yeah, it's a safety issue. But how are they going to enforce that? How is a Board of Health going to enforce a ban on using cell phones in cars? They don't have a car. If they do have access to a town vehicle, it's not going to have a siren on it. How are they even going to see whether someone's using it? It wasn't going to be reasonable, and it wasn't going to be effective because they couldn't enforce it. They decided not to go forward with that regulation, and now the legislature's passed laws and its enforcement is with the police, which is where it should be. Next slide. So the way we do our enforcing of public health laws in Massachusetts is, as I said, the legislature delegated the vast majority of its authority to local boards of health. The Department of Public Health does have some authority to enforce, so does DEP, but I cannot think of one instance where the Department of Public Health has actually stepped in, even though they do have the authority. Most of the time, the primary enforcing agent is going to be the Board of Health. Next slide. So Chapter 111 also has other sections in it. And one of the sections is Section 27. And that section gives the authority to employ staff and to set budgets to the Board of Health itself. That's in the statute. However, there are ways that a city or town can amend that section by either through a town charter, a city charter, or a piece of special legislation. And I think that's one of the things that the select board is looking at. Next slide. And what I should also say about that is that, well, here it is. So the Board of Health annually reorganizes. And then this is where Section 27 says that they may employ the necessary officers, agents, and assistants to help them execute the laws and enforce the laws, and may fix the salary. Well, you could fix the salary at whatever you want, but if town meeting doesn't give you the budget, you know, that great, you know, but you don't have the money to do it. So there are certainly limitations in Section 27 itself, and also there are charters and special legislation that can redo the infrastructure of a health department. Next slide. So there are, though, all municipal employees have to comply with standards of conduct that are in the conflict of interest law. You know, there can be no appearance of impropriety, no misuse of a position. You can't act inappropriately or outside, regardless of who has the supervisory role in health department staff. Staff has to be acting appropriately and in the realm of acceptable conduct. A staff can't be rogue just because they're under the supervision of the Board of Health. They still need to adhere to whatever standards of conduct that a city or town may have, in addition to the standards of conduct that are in the conflict of interest law. Next slide. So now to look at some other sections in Chapter 111. And again, there are many more than this. Mike is going to show you a slide that's going to go through a litany of statutory and regulatory responsibilities of boards of health. We're going to just look at two of them. We're going to look at nuisance. Next slide. This is a very, very broad section of the law, and it actually mandates boards of health to examine into all nuisances, sources of filth, and causes of sickness, which in its opinion, and here's where the discretion comes in again, which in its opinion may be harmful to public health. So it's a very, very broad statute, and when I was in law school, Professor Prosser wrote a book that said there is perhaps no more impenetrable jungle in the entire law than that which surrounds the word nuisance. So you've got 5 volunteers in your town getting paid the big bucks to determine what a nuisance is. And if they do determine something is a nuisance, next slide please, they have the obligation to get rid of it or to regulate it. An exception is generally acceptable. Farming procedures, doesn't have to be best practices, but it has to be generally accepted farming procedures. They are not, by definition, a nuisance. Next slide. I threw these in just to, okay, so not this one. I threw in a couple of pictures so you could, maybe if you were falling asleep, you might want to
I
look
don't
at
think
them.
so.
Oh, did you take them out?
I didn't. I added
Okay,
this one, but you
whatever.
took the other ones
Okay,
out.
but, okay, so is there any assistance that your 5 Board of Health members can have when they're thinking about whether there actually is a public health nuisance? And yeah, there are, and you want to make sure that you're basing this on public health principles. Does the condition affect the public? Or is the condition just about one individual or one household? If it is about one individual or one household, could that condition spread to neighboring individuals or households? Could the individual spread the nuisance to the wider community? And is there a real risk here? You know, is there a real risk? And I would bring you back to the Arthur G. Little case. It's a judgment call that the board makes, but it's something to really think about. Next slide. Other factors, you know, we've been through this with, you know, years ago with COVID. And is it in a condition that might cause trauma or injury? Could it expose residents to hazardous elements or substances? These are some of the factors that the board would be thinking about when they were determining whether something was a nuisance that needed to be abated. Next Next slide. And as I said, if they find that a nuisance exists, they need to issue a cease and desist order within a reasonable amount of time to whoever the alleged violator is. That violator is subject to a $1,000 per day fine. And what frequently would happen is they would issue the cease and desist and ask the person to come before the board to explain to them how they're going to abate the nuisance and how long it's going to take. And if the person does not abate the nuisance, then the town can abate it and then put a lien on the property, and we have all sorts of templates to assist in that process. Next slide. So I also wanted to talk a little bit about noisome trades, because that's an area of the law where the Board of Health can actually either refuse to cite a business or put conditions on a business that is either potentially dangerous or could even affect the property value of residents. And examples of that would be fat rendering plants, asphalt plants, manufacturing of fish meal, auto body shops. These are the kinds of trades that are considered noisome, and frequently boards will cite either hours of operation or a better location, but this is something that they need to be careful about doing because you want to work with your municipal attorney and make sure that you're not bucking heads with zoning laws and so forth. So I think that might
that's
be
where
it
yeah.
for me.
So I just want to throw one thing, and when Cheryl said $1,000 per day for fines for nuisance, sometimes a business doesn't care about $1,000 a day, and we worked with a Board of Health out in Western Mass, where we went with, in our cease and desist order, $1,000 per occurrence per day, and it affected 480 households. And the business had a net revenue of $630,000 a year, and came back to the board and said, if we miss this by one day, you're gonna kill us, but by 2 days, by noon the second day, we're bankrupt. Got their attention. And so sometimes that's what it takes when you're going after a nuisance.
But I do want to emphasize that that's not the goal of a Board of Health.
Right.
The goal of a Board of Health is to get compliance, not punishment. And usually we can get compliance by just calling someone up and saying, hey, your restaurant dumpster is overflowing, could you just clean it? That's how it should work,
Right.
and that's how it usually does work. This is just for
That's
really
pretty
bad.
extreme, and the board did back way up by about $480,000 a day. But, okay, so these are actually, this is one of our publications, and these, and it's way out of date, but as of 2016, these were the areas in which boards of health exclusively has jurisdiction over regulation. If you want to go to the next slide, please. This is a more graphic way of taking a look at it, but everything that's on this slide, there's no one else in town that does this. It's totally up to the board. Okay, so we're going to move on now, and we're going to talk about the new legislation that just passed, how it's going to affect boards of health, and how it's going to affect really everything about the way that you as selectmen would look at your Board of Health and what the responsibilities are. Next slide, please. So in 2016, the Special Commission on Local and Regional Health was convened by the governor and by the legislature, and a result of that was that a whole new system was devised in there. Go to the next slide, please. The report of the Special Commission pointed out that public health in Massachusetts, 351 separate boards of health, it just doesn't work. And it's cumbersome, it's slow, it's broken, it's just completely broken. It's just inequitable. You have towns like Carlisle that have a good health department and good services. You have towns that are bigger than Carlisle that have smaller health departments. And you have towns that are way bigger that have everything that they need. And next slide, please. And so the legislature the legislature took a good solid look at the whole picture. And in the report of the special commission, which consisted of insurance people, public health people, the Mass Municipal Association, the Mass Taxpayers Foundation, Cheryl Sabara. It was a very broad basis of knowledge that went into their report. And what they came up with was a system where they would, for the first time, bring federal funding and state funding to local public health. Up until this year, there's been no program mandated by state law that makes the state pay for anything. You folks have had to fund your health department completely. And if they got a grant, wonderful, but if they didn't, it's completely up to town meeting. I know in my 15 years that I served in Framingham, 8 of them I was chair, and I went 8 times for money to the town meeting, and it's difficult because there's so many competing ideas. And it's easy for a really well-functioning Board of Health not to draw any attention, because if they're doing their job, nobody knows that they're there. And I found that was the most difficult part about fundraising for my board, was the fact that we were doing great work, nobody even knew we were there. So the second year I went back and showed them what we do, and I got good funding. But this is now the first time that the state is going to be putting money into public health. And there are some requirements. You are part of a collaborative, and your towns that you're working with are, I know I'm gonna get this wrong. You're in with Sudbury, Wayland, Weston, Concord, Lincoln, and Bedford. And that group is, has been around for several years and is considered really one of the best functioning groups that there is. There's 51 shared services groups now across the state. 321 cities and towns are participating in this program. And so instead of having 351 boards of health doing their own thing, now at least we have 51 groups that are all working together. And the funding, we'll get into the funding in a second, but in exchange for being in this program, the only things that the towns have to do are there's 5 obligations that you have. One is a letter of commitment that was done a couple of years ago by the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Health. You have a shared services coordinator that works with your group. She's excellent. You have to have one primary and one backup person to do your MAVEN reporting. MAVEN is the communicable disease reporting. And those were the people during COVID that were making the phone calls and saying, we need to know who you were with when you got COVID. And then you have to have a governance and advisory board that meets at least quarterly, and you have to do a report every 3 years, which the Board of Health hasn't come to that point yet because the law is so new. So 3 years from now, there's going to have to be some periodic reporting. But there is a 3 times a year report that's done now by the Shared Services Group with financial accounting, and that's being done now. Those are the only obligations that you have as a town. Next slide, please. In return for the obligations, this is what it looks like financially. Your group, your town, last year, or FY25, has $154,000 for your health budget. Next year's proposal is $167,000. The grant brings $447,064 a year. It's funded already. There was something in the news today about how the federal government is clawing back some of the funds that they've committed from COVID. This money is all in the bank, spent at this point, so they can claw it back, but they're not going to get anything because it's all committed and it's protected. So for the next for 3 fiscal years, you're at $447,000. That money's coming from $200 million from ARPA, $52.6 million from the CDC on a public health infrastructure grant, and then another smaller grant that actually pays for us to be here. We're not paid out of those funds. All of that funding has been, it's all safe. Beyond that, we don't know what's going to happen. We would have felt more comfortable a year ago sitting here and talking about what we think is going to happen, but we just don't know. But one thing that won't happen is I don't believe that the state will allow this program to fail, because it's now it's now at a point where it's not going to cost the $200 million a year like right now they're spending, but because right now they're spending $98 million on data modernization. Every Board of Health, regardless if it's Concord or Boston, is going to get new computer equipment, new software, new hardware, inspection tablets so that your inspectors will be working on a tablet-based program, all paid for by the state, regardless if you're in or not in that program. Where being in the program helps you is that all of your trainings have to be supplied for free, and we'll talk about that in a second. But by being in the program, you won't get on a waiting list that you can't get through. You might get on a waiting list for training, but you'll get reached. If you're not in the program, you're going to get bumped down and down and down. You'll never get reached. So that's just a quick thing on the advantage of that. One of the advantages of the program. Okay, next slide, please. So the policy of the State Action for Public Health Excellence, known as SAFE program, the policy is basically to bring all ships to the same level of a tide. So Carlisle will have the same public health services that Boston and Cambridge and Ware and Barnstable and you name the town. Everybody is going to be looked at on the same level by the Department of Public Health and funded to all be functioning on the core public health functions. There's going to be things, Boston has hospitals, Cambridge has hospitals. You don't have a hospital that's in your budget. But there are things over and above the public health needs, the foundational services. Everything that's a foundational service is going to be paid for right across the state by this program. So, next one, please. So these are the new standards, the new standards and the new, really the new way of doing everything. All inspections are going to be tablet-based. They're all going to be, the reporting is going to go directly to the state and to your office here. Epidemiology is going to become a two-way street. Right now, if you have a disease, you report it on the MAVEN system. Your nurse reports it through MAVEN. The state collects that data, and that's where it ends. Where it's going to go now is the state's going to collect that data. They're going to say, you know, something's going on in Carlisle that's not going on in Concord. Why? Why is there a higher cancer rate in Plymouth than there is in Bourne, touching towns? The state's going to start actually looking at this data. They now have the money out of that $98 million portion to start to analyze what's going on with health outcomes across the state. The permitting, that's all part of the tablet base. The workforce education training and credentialing standards. Instead of sending your inspectors to Western Mass to go do soil school so that they know how to do Title V work, it's going to be coming here. They have training hubs, 10 training hubs across the state. Nobody has to go to a hotel to stay overnight for trainings anymore under this program. Okay, next slide, please. And then under SAFE, in addition to being in the program, the 5 things I told you about before, there have to be, the state will come down with the standards, and you will have to meet the standards naturally. And the easiest way, as I already talked about, is through the cross-jurisdictional sharing, because that gives you all of the advantages of the funding. You will have an annual report. That's the one that you don't have to do yet. And that annual report is aimed at giving the Department of Public Health enough fuel to go to get the budget that they need to keep this program going. And I'll tell you right now that we've been very blessed with the current administration. we're funded, there's, in addition to the 200 and whatever million, I'm gonna move right along here, I'm going as fast as I can. In addition to that funding, there's an annual line item in the DPH budget, which this year, Health and Human Services was cut $100 million when, on the governor's proposed budget. This line item was not touched. It's level funded from last year, and the governor has said, when you run out of the $200 million, when that's all implemented, we know you're coming for more money. We'll deal with it then. So we know we have their attention, we know that we have their commitment to making this all work. We'll move right along to the next slide. I'm going as fast as I can. And we're almost done. Okay, so DEP and DPH have obligations basically to give free trainings to your whole staff and to everybody actually in town that works in public health. If you have building inspectors that do some of the health work at all, doing any crossover, they're all able to take advantage of all of these trainings for free. And then we can keep moving because we're going to give you these slides. You'll be able to read them yourself. Okay, and then these are really the rest of the obligations that they have. They're going to continue to be looking for funding that they can pass on to you. Technical assistance they're paying for, that's why we're here. We're paid out of grant money for being here. And that they're going to come up with some ideas and ways of measuring the effectiveness of all of this expenditure that they're doing and helping us to sustain the program. Keep moving. I know we're running long, so I think that this is in the new statute. This is the one provision that we stood very strong with, and that is that boards of health do not give up any of their autonomy. There's still 351 boards of health. They can make regulations that work in your town, and the legislature has been very good about making sure that they can touch that, and I think that we're done. Okay.
Great, well, thank you. Actually, if you wouldn't mind just staying seated, I mean, this has been really helpful to understand kind of the powers and authority and some of the, what is happening at the state level. We had been involved tonight to try and, with the Board of Health, because as you may have seen our town administrator bylaw, we've had several drafts. Initially, it started out of a task force that was independent of us 5 years ago that looked at our town and suggested some things that would improve our operations internally within the town. And we started with a bylaw. We've reached out to a number of boards. We've taken feedback, comments. We've tried to work in those types of things. And have you had a chance to see the latest version?
Yes.
I think it's, yeah. And I know I'd sent it to the Board of Health as well. And, you know, I think that there is a concern, and I can let the Board of Health articulate your concerns about this, but if you are experts in this at a state level, if there's something in that bylaw that is, you know, antithetical or doesn't work for us, you know, because of the law, we certainly want to know about it. We've had some legal opinions from our town council who doesn't think, because it's really focused on HR, human resource management, it's not about policy. The select board is not trying to reach into the Board of Health or any other board and dictate policy we want. That's not what we're trying to do. We're just trying to get the human resource personnel of the town all under kind of a common umbrella so that we have a better managerial structure so we can assess performance and other things relative to the employees in town. And so I think there was concern, and I can, you know, let Patrick or the Board of Health talk about any concerns they have, but just if you can talk to that and say, you know, do we have an issue with our draft bylaw? We'd like to know about it because we're trying to make it better.
Yeah, what I would say is this comes up a lot, and the personnel, HR is HR for everyone, as far as I'm concerned. You know, I was looking at Boston today, knowing that I was coming here, and, you know, they have a huge Boston Public Health Commission, and all employees in that commission are subject to the same employee handbook that everyone else is subject to. So, you know, and as I said before, you know, behavior always has to be appropriate. I don't care what department you work in. And I'm thinking that I'm hearing from you, and I sensed in the tenor of the warrant article, the most recent one, is that you're not looking at what someone's job description is, like what they would be doing on a daily basis. I think you're just looking at making sure that the behavior is appropriate. Is that what the intent of this bylaw is? So that there's one person, and lots of, I'm gonna be politically incorrect, but if a town is working well, there is communication between and among departments, all departments, doesn't matter which department it is. And it doesn't matter who is the supervisor of anyone, that if a town is working well, all the employees are really on the same page. They're all trying to do what's in the benefit of the town. That's not always the case. Towns don't, and Board of Health members have their own jobs. You know, they're volunteers just like select board members are. And they can't do day-to-day supervising of, just like you can't do day-to-day supervising of who's in your office either. So I don't think it's unreasonable to have an HR department that is there, let's say, two employees have a conflict. There should be some way to work that out that doesn't involve local Board of Health members or select board members. That should be able to be worked out by someone. And you would, I don't know how big the staff is in your health department. I don't know how many you have. If there's a conflict between two people in the health department, you would hope that the health director would be able to help work that out. If that's not the case, then you're gonna need someone else to help work that out. As in any department, any municipal department, the same thing would hold. So, and I'm sure you have, I'm sure you have salary classifications for different people within the town. The town meeting dictates those. You know, the Board of Health, while they by law have the ability, they don't in practice because they can't change what the budget of the town is. So the one thing that did stick out to me that I would like to see it maybe addressed a little differently is the ability to hire and fire staff. I would really like to see that be in consultation with the Board of Health, not solely with a town administrator, not just in, you know, so that the board and the town administrator, because of the nature of the health department's work and the statutory and regulatory obligations, I would like to see the Board of Health have a role in that I don't really see the way it's written. It says it's not in collaboration. It's like, we'll let you know what we're doing. At least that's the way I read it the last time. I think that that's what happened when Belmont was looking at this. That's what Belmont ended up tweaking their agreement so that happened. And again, we see that happen not in Carlisle, but in larger municipalities where they have inspectors sitting in a different department than the Board of Health. It's really important that there's communication between the building department and the health department, those kinds of things. And if there's communication, it always works itself out in a functioning municipality, you know, as long as everyone's respectful and everyone understands. The board is a little different. The Board of Health, because of where they get their authority, they don't get it from the select board or from town meeting. They get it directly from the legislature. And that creates a bit of a struggle sometimes, a natural tension between, you know, town meeting, select boards, and boards of health. So, and that's because of where they get their authority from. And It's just where they get their authority from.
That's why we wanted to show you what the authority, because it's so different.
Yep.
And what Cheryl said, I can't emphasize enough. When I was on the board in Framingham, planning board, the zoning board, town meeting passed, even passed something to bring in a development in Framingham. $2.5 million in legal fees were spent on all of the planning work to get this done, not by the town, but by the developer. 76 units he wanted to put in on bedrock. And the Board of Health, I went to their very first meeting and said, don't anybody do anything until you come to the Board of Health, and they blew me off. After 2 years of planning, and after the appeals court came back and said, but you didn't do what the Board of Health said, and you didn't run just a simple well pump test was all we wanted, and they couldn't pass it, they knew. So that's the communication between the town, and, you know, your town administrator sure knows that, you know, and he's gonna keep an eye on that stuff. But that's an important part.
We do have a legal hearing coming up, so I need to kind of wrap up, but I'd offer to the Board of Health, do you have any other questions at this point? or-
Travis?
Oh,
Travis?
yes.
This is Jen.
Oh, hey, Jen.
Sorry.
Yep.
Hi. Sorry for being on Zoom. I had some conflicts, but I just wanted to make a statement and sort of ask a question maybe of Cheryl, but I think, Travis, you were asking for us to sort of help to explain some of the concerns. So I'll just it's pretty simple in my mind that the concern is really around when you talk about an HR function and you talk about the role of a board and its independent responsibility to state law, the employees in that team need to be able to feel unencumbered to make decisions in the best interest of public health. And in order to do that, they need to structurally have the independence to do that. And so I think of it a lot like a compliance function. And when you think about a compliance function in the business world, you have to think about the reporting structure and who is handling the HR functions, because you don't want there to be any fear of retribution or any concerns around decisions, conversations, activities that need to occur. And so I'm just saying that out loud. Cheryl, you're welcome to comment on that if you want to, but that really is, in my mind, the biggest concern around some of the changes that we're talking about. So,
You know, that I couldn't agree with you more, that the judgment and the discretion of your staff is important, because they should have the knowledge base to be able to make decisions that affect public health. I thought when I say HR, I think of HR as putting some parameters around behavior, not about making decisions, but around employee behavior, not, you know, and conflicts that may arise between different staff members. I'm not talking about the work that the health department does. I don't think the town administrator should be involved in the work that they do at all. I think that HR should be involved in the behavior of all employees and the expectations of all employees, not about decision-making about public health matters.
Right, and that's what we're trying to craft with this bylaw. And we said it over and over in the latest draft, this is not about policy at all. But it's just about HR. I love this discussion because I think we need to have this, and it's important because, you know, there are differing views on it within our committee or select board versus, or compared to other people. So we need to keep talking about it, but regrettably, we do have some hard deadlines of things that we have to get to tonight. So I thank you for your both.
Thank you very much.
And,
thank you for your
Thank you.
attention.
Are you gonna take up mosquito or after the hearing?
Well, how long is the hearing?
It's only,
It's like
That's
5 minutes.
5 minutes? Would the Board of Health be willing to wait around for 5 minutes? Okay, thank you, because this is a legal hearing, so we're already beyond the time we're supposed to start it, but, all right, is anyone, Kate, you want to,
I gotta find it.
this
Yeah.
is
I got it. Whole hearing
a poll
script.
hearing on East Street?
All right, I move to open the public hearing pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 166, Section 22. I move to open the public hearing for the joint or identical pole locations petition submitted by Verizon New England, Inc. and Enstar Electric Company, doing business as Eversource Energy, to locate poles, wires, cables, and fixtures, including the necessary anchors, guys, and other such sustaining and protecting fixtures to be owned and used in common by your petitioners along and across Bedford Road.
Great. Do we need to have a roll call vote to
Need a
open this?
second first.
Oh,
Second.
Yes, any vote needs to be roll call.
or to open the hearing?
Yes, because
Okay, so the motion to open the hearing.
Second.
Okay, so we'll do a roll call vote. Barney? Are you there?
Arnold, I.
Thank you.
Modell, aye.
read
Yep.
Snell, aye.
Trill, aye.
Okay. Great. Hi, welcome.
Hello, Don Bonner with Verizon. I'm amazed you gave this 5 minutes. I hope it only takes that, that'd be great. The 3 poles on East Street, do I trust you?
Are they the ones that we see laying around on the side of the road right now?
I'm not sure. One or two of them might be, but I know that they're replacing a whole bunch of poles along East Street, which is in sore need of being replaced.
This is what they see in their packet.
Okay, great. And the map as well, the next page probably?
Oh, there's the
Yeah,
map, okay.
So the 2 of the poles, the 2 on either end, currently have guy wires attached to trees, which is the old way of doing things, and it's really bad, because the tree comes down, the pole does too, and the line with it. So the 2 on the ends are to rectify, I know, actually, I should clarify something. The packet says all 3 are pole-to-tree guy issues. I didn't notice the middle one being a pole-to-tree guy. It's possible that an old guy wire fell down, but I didn't notice it. What I did notice is the middle pole is leaning away from the curve. It's being pulled towards the wetland area. So that's the reason why this one's being requested, I believe. I went out there earlier, I checked all the measurements. Stakes for 2 of them were either removed or cracked. I put them back in place, measured them out so that they were where they should be. And that's my introduction.
So you putting the poles on the other side of the street from where they originally were? Is that what I'm understanding?
Correct,
Okay.
yes. Because right now, the 2, where you see poles on the other side of the street, there's a tree there with the guy wire attached to the tree.
Yeah.
And that has to be removed.
Okay. Are there any questions from the select board?
No.
I mean, are the property owners on the other side of the street that are getting poles, or, I mean, are they aware and on board with this?
They should have been sent, we may hear from one or
Yep,
more of them
we're gonna open it
afterwards,
up,
but
yep.
they have all been sent notification.
Okay.
One of these, I can tell you, is to the right of someone's driveway. I checked where the pole should be going. It should not be in the line of sight, because I don't see any way they're not pulling to the end of the driveway, because it's a tight turn. It's 525 east, because people are coming around that corner, so they're gonna need to pull up to make sure. The other 2, there's no houses at 1112 off Lowell Street, where the other 2 are going. There is a gate towards some old road, and that
That's
stake
the
has been.
conservation parcel
Where did-
that we're,
Yeah, it's been moved off to the side of the gate.
Okay.
I think there's been a lot of problems with the one on the corner of East Riding and East Street. I think whenever we have power failures around there, it's because that wire's the one that's down.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, you
And
decide.
a wire currently crosses the road there
Yeah.
to the house, so you're just moving the pole? Okay, I understand.
I'd open it up to the public. Is there anyone who wants to ask a question or make a comment regarding this issue? Seeing none in the audience, can we look on Zoom if there's anyone on Zoom? Okay.
Okay, so
If
let
there
me
are no
get
more
back.
questions from the select board, I'd ask that someone move to close the hearing and
Okay, I move to close the public hearing for the joint or identical poll locations petition.
Second.
okay, roll call vote. Barney?
Arnold, I.
Modell, aye.
Reed, aye.
Snell,
Arnold,
aye.
I.
Triola, aye.
Okay, we
Arnold
got you
twice.
twice there, Barney.
I voted twice.
So now I'm going to move to
6-0.
approve the petition and plan submitted by Verizon New England, Inc. and Enstar Electric Company doing business as Eversource Energy for the purpose of obtaining a joint or identical pole location to locate poles, wires, cables, and fixtures, including the necessary anchors, guys, and other such sustaining and protecting fixtures to be owned and used in common by your petitioners along and across East Street. Said work is necessary to remedy an existing pole-to-tree guying issues and to provide for the distribution of intelligence and telecommunications and the transmission of high and low voltage electric current.
Second.
All right, any further discussion?
Well, it should either be an existing pole-to-tree guying issue or existing
Yes,
pole-to-tree
yes.
guying issues. So
Yes.
pick one.
It's-
So pick which one. Is it multiple issues or the same issue twice?
It's multiple issues.
Okay,
It's
then-
two pole-to-tree
So it
guys.
should be
Plural.
edited to say, to remove the N, A-N,
The existing pole to.
to remedy existing
Yes,
pole-to-tree
yes,
guying
right.
issues.
All right,
Okay.
so we'll amend it as
Okay.
such.
Yes. I
Okay?
accept
That's
the
it.
amendment.
Okay,
Okay.
great.
Just reading the script. Come on. give me-
Great, all right, we're gonna do a roll call vote,
Gotta have some fun, come on.
starting with
Arnold, I.
Modell, aye.
Reed, aye.
Snell, aye.
Triola, aye.
Okay, thank you very
We
much
did
for
our 5
coming.
minutes?
Yeah, you were right.
All right,
Good job.
thank you. Thank you for coming.
I know we have the Transfer Station Action Committee up next, but we're going to delay that just a few minutes while we finish our discussion with the Board of Health, if that's all right.
Yep.
Okay, so, where were we?
I think Jen made some really good comments. That's really what our concern was. And it was reiterated. The way I read it, it sounds like most of the people that have read the, whatever we're calling this thing.
TA bylaw,
Yeah.
Town Administrator bylaw.
The concern of the hiring and firing, and it sounds very cursory that we'll be consulted. It sounds like, yeah, you can make your decision who you want, but like that, I mean, from my perspective, from the Board of Health's perspective, we talked about this, we'd like that at least to be, it needs to be more than just a, we'll let you know kind of thing. I think it needs to be, ideally, I'd like us to be able, as a Board of Health, decide who we'd like to hire and fire, but, I understand what you're after, and I think that it's very important that the Board of Health be really the decider of people that we want to have working for us. And if we feel somebody needs to go, we would really feel that the Board of Health should be the decider. So, to just say that we'll just be consulted about those type of things is a real concern. I don't know if you
Tony, did you want to?
Just to add to that, I think, and you can kind of steer me the right direction if I'm off here, but if the Board of Health has the authority and the responsibility to protect public health, they need to have the authority to staff a department that they feel will protect public health. It's their responsibility to do that. And we all have training, we all have experience, we all are involved in an almost day-to-day basis, some not as much as others because we're volunteers, but in public health in Carlisle. And I think the board in Carlisle should be given the full authority to hire and staff the health department. So just a little bit of a modification as to how authority and responsibility relate to those practices.
I would agree with all that, but I would go a little further. I mean, according to your presentation, we have the responsibility to hire and fire public health employees. And I don't think that, according to state law, I don't think that we should be giving up that responsibility. So I think the final responsibility does need to stay with the Board of Health.
Kate?
Well, I don't want to get in a rebuttal, but I would like to read the section that I think we're talking about.
Okay.
And I would like to understand how this could be then amended in order to do this, or be shown where this language is taking away any responsibility. But anyway, where an employee is responsible for assisting the operations of an elected or appointed town official or multiple member body, we're talking about your sort of situation, the town administrator shall consult with such official or multiple member body prior to making an appointment or removal under this section. How can, how?
Well, that's just
So is the word, is it the word consult?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what other word could be used then?
Well,
That would
I
be
don't think the town
appropriate.
administrator should have the authority to hire or fire an employee of the Board of Health. He's welcome to consult with us and tell us his concerns, but I think that's just the opposite of what it should be. The way that's written, the town administrator makes the final decision. It should be the Board of Health that makes the final decision.
Ma'am, you mentioned Belmont.
Yeah,
Is there language?
and I
I mean,
can
is there
find
some
that
language that-
language for you, and that was the big concern. This was a few years, this was probably 5 years ago, where the board was, they fixed the language, but the town administrator act still went down. The town meeting voted against it because they still wanted the Board of Health to have more authority. But they did change the language so that it was a joint decision, you know, which might be a compromise here, but it would be a joint decision. The town administrator would not have the authority unless the Board of Health agreed.
And so was it joint town administrator and Board of Health, or joint select board and Board of Health?
It was,
It's
in
right.
this case, it was the town administrator.
Okay.
But the town administrator gets his authority from you.
Yes.
Right.
From the
Right, I know,
select-
but we're not, if it's joint, it's not joint between board to board. In
No.
the case you're talking about, it's joint between the administrator and the other.
It was.
And I guess to a little bit address David's comment, is it, I didn't read from the part you had on the screen, I didn't quite read it the way David read it, that the authority to hire and fire flows from the state. Can you
It
comment on
does
that?
in chapter 111, section 27, which is what you have now. You don't have now.
Oh, that's why we have to ask for a special.
That's why you would go to
Okay.
town meeting and then go to a piece of special legislation.
Right.
Because right now, the state law says that the Board of Health has that authority.
I see,
To hire, fire, and supervise.
I see,
Right.
okay.
And that's kind of one of the challenges we're dealing with, is really this supervision, hiring and firing is a personnel issue. And if you're going to have report to a board, your board has to have a meeting and has a public meeting to address that. And that's a different scenario than having a employee of the town administrator, who then has the authority to do those types of things and can implement the policies that the select board has put forward for personnel policies, implement those policies, do it in a professional way, the way it's done in most companies throughout America. It's different because we're a public entity here. So what we're trying to do is move this to a more, I guess, a better run situation, because you don't have to then pull up an employee through a public process.
Well, you
of
wouldn't
that.
have to do
Travis,
that.
let
You
me
could do it-
speak to that for a minute.
Sure.
Because the major piece here is that this function of the Board of Health is not like any other corporation in America. In the purpose of, in my mind, and I have a lot of experience with quality and compliance in healthcare. And so in my experience and in my mind, this function is pushed through a public conversation because that holds to the integrity of the decision being on behalf of the public health. When you pull that into a room and you shut the doors with a person or even a small board, a small group of people, like with that power and authority to manage the human resources, we'd be kidding ourselves to say that that management practice doesn't drive performance and decision-making of someone or a team of people that need to be responsible to the public. So to me, it is not like corporate America. It is like a compliance function, and that reporting structure gets pulled right out. They report directly into a board of directors, not even to a CEO, right? Because of the importance of the integrity of those decisions.
Right.
So I continue to bring that up because I think even as we discuss compromising, we need to make sure that that principle stays intact somehow.
Right. Well, we are doing that to some degree currently, because our town administrator has the authority to, hire and fire employees, but it's at certain levels, perhaps that's where you're saying it's different. I mean, one of the things that we're struggling with is we'd like, as a town, at least our select board is thinking, that it makes a lot more sense to be able to allow resource sharing. And if each silo of each board doesn't allow that, it creates a situation where a town is going to have a lot more resources dedicated to something than it may need, and that's going to ultimately cost taxpayers a lot more. And we're balancing that with, obviously we always want to offer the service and we want to do it in a transparent way, but, we've got to find that right balance. And I don't think we've got it at the moment.
And that makes sense. And I do believe we could be, because everything that you say completely makes sense to me, and there should be efficiencies. That makes a ton of sense. We're a very small town. But that to me is a different issue and probably a slightly different solution than, keeping the integrity of the Board of Health and its independence and its thinking and decision making. To me, it's a little different.
We're not trying to take your decision making away. Again, this is not about policy. This is not about just the Board of Health either. I mean, this is a discussion we're having.
So that's where we have our disagreement. We had that disagreement before.
Okay.
And it could just be that we're just gonna maintain that we don't agree. But I, from my personal experience, cannot accept that someone who has the ability to hire, fire, promote, decide, raise, everything, does not have a thumb on the scale. And if there's a conflict, and we've had plenty of those, between what the select board wants and what the Board of Health wants, that thumb on the scale is going to have the potential to affect public health. And I don't think that thumb should be there. And that's the opinion that we talked about this at length in our meeting. And I think, David, you heard what we were saying.
I hear it and I understand it. I think that will be resolved, I suppose, by the town in a vote.
Yeah.
But I would say, we're not gonna resolve that tonight.
No, we're not.
But I think the attempt here, and I would appreciate, any other insight like you told us, we could maybe research I don't know if you can find it since it went down, but the actual verbiage that.
I can.
I think we have a duty, regardless of where we stand on the issue, to try to at least modify the language so that we are sensitive to a compromise. If we're never gonna convince you guys, and you're not gonna convince these guys, but the town will, I recuse myself from that. But the town will ultimately decide it, and we owe the town, the voters, a decent job at a compromise. So just saying, no, I disagree, is not a helpful thing, right?
So I have a question. So a lot of this seems to boil down to proper behavior, whatever proper behavior is. Now, there's some behaviors that I think we can all agree are improper, sexual harassment being one of them. Do we actually have a problem? I mean, have we had what people consider inappropriate behavior?
Some people would say yes.
I don't want to get into a public discussion.
I can answer
on
just, so the primary issue that I have with the statutory nature of Carlisle is when two employees with different appointing authorities have conflict with each other, it is nearly impossible for me to get the two boards to perform HR functions in a way that's fair to all employees. So it's less about the person at the top of the hierarchy, and it's more, can employees equitably execute the town policy when two employees disagree and one of them has one appointing authority and one of them has the other. I can't compel either appointing authority to do anything, including enforce HR policy and rule.
Okay. I mean, I certainly think if there's serious serious employee infractions, that should be addressed. But I do think that if that's the case, and it involves an employee of the Board of Health, I think the Board of Health should be involved and should at least have equal authority in deciding whether an employee of the Board of Health is terminated, for instance.
And I think the Board of Health should be involved too.
Well, but not just involved. I don't mean in an advisory capacity. I mean in making the final decision.
I think
mean,
that should happen too.
What? Okay.
So thank you for everything.
Thank you.
We appreciate, and I mean, we came here, all five of us, because this is very important to
Yeah,
us.
it is important.
And appreciate the request, the offer to come here and try to come up with a compromise, because I hear what you guys are saying, and I'm trying to figure out the best way where we can find that middle ground, and hopefully the warrant article, whatever it's called, that you're gonna put out is something that we can be behind, and
Great.
that's what we are. So-
We'll continue working on this with you. We're not gonna walk out of this
Yeah.
room and walk away.
Great.
We'll continue to.
Great.
Still gonna talk about mosquitoes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna finish that one.
Not
Thank you.
Carlisle. Not the
Yeah,
newspaper,
we'll talk.
the actual
Mosquitoes are
mosquitoes.
exciting.
You can kill off the mosquito.
We don't have a ton of time because we have such a packed agenda, but we did want to ask you about the mosquito program. That's-
Do you want
Do
to
you,
take that one, Tony?
do you have, I know you have a hearing tomorrow night on it, but just in the event that we're not all going to be there or whatever, is there something you might want to publicly share about that that would be helpful to us? Because we have to, we'll ultimately take a position on that as well. Or maybe not. The select board may or may not take a position.
Okay, so we will, when we present in town meeting, we'll show our map, but I don't have it here. I wasn't prepared for a presentation, sorry. But,
I'm sorry to catch you off guard.
Yeah, but if you look at the state map, Carlisle is this one little donut hole in the entire area that is not part of a mosquito, what we like to call surveillance program. It's really, they're all called mosquito control programs, but that gives the wrong impression. And David recently presented to planning board about marketing your bylaws and getting the message out. The message we want to get out is that we believe it's in the interest of public health in Carlisle for us to be on top of understanding what types of mosquitoes we have in Carlisle and what the populations are and which ones carry Triple E and West Nile virus, which are on the rise, and in towns within our region in Massachusetts. And to do that, we need to be part of some sort of program. That's not something we can contract out and do ourselves. So we are proposing that the town approve funding for that's what we're bringing before the town, to be part of that program. And I think it's imperative that we get the message across to the town that this is not a spray program. We would have nothing to do with spraying. And although these mosquito control groups do spraying, larvicide, adult mosquito sprays, that type of thing, we would bring it on only for the experts to come into town and do the surveillance, do the sampling, do the testing, and give us as a board the information we need to say, okay, it's ramped up, we're seeing cases in surrounding towns, Carlisle has this type of mosquito, the virus is present in these mosquitoes, we need to advise town programs not to have people out in public activities at just before dusk, when they are more readily out and doing their blood collecting. So that's solely what we're looking for, is to really get a handle on what's going on in Carlisle and how to best advise the public as to what the implications are to public health of these mosquito-borne illnesses.
Yeah, Tony, so 2 questions. One is, since you're looking for West Nile and Triple E, and Linda's memo or your memo to us, West Nile is not found till late June, early July, Triple E in August. Is it 2 different collections you're advocating? Is that what's going on? Or are you able to tell how do you tell that?
So I'm at a loss for that. We'll have the experts at our meeting tomorrow
But
night.
it's your understanding that you're getting both?
Yes,
Or
it's a
whatever.
year-round surveillance, and they
Okay.
pick the
I
times
see.
that they
Okay,
need
so it's not
to
the one time.
collect their data. So I don't understand exactly what those times are for each.
Then the
But-
second thing, again, this may be helpful for your hearing, is, there's a, part of this calendar issue is the funding, so I guess if it's not ready in time for the West Nile wave, you catch it on the back end, is that the idea? So you'll get both over the course of a 12-month, and then my last question is this, once we start this, is it recommended that it's just annual? It's an ongoing? So
Yes.
in terms of operating expense, that's an expense we should consider to be recurring at this point, if we are serious about monitoring?
It's data-driven. We talk about having data, so.
No, I don't disagree, I'm just saying, is it snapshot data or it's continuous monitoring?
No, it's an ongoing,
Right.
and
Okay, all right,
if
okay.
you pay, you get
Right,
an
on a
ongoing.
regular basis,
Yeah.
and then you know when you
Or
have
you
to
have a
say there's
snapshot,
one.
and then you don't have any more. So.
And these authorities, I guess, or, when they're doing the data, they have their threshold where, I mean, there's always some, right? But it has to reach some critical amount where you start warning people not to stay out in the afternoon or something,
Right.
evening.
Right, and, some residents have brought up some good points. We've been pursuing this for years.
Yeah.
And, some residents have discussed some pretty good points, saying, hey, well, if all the towns around us have that information, because they're part of the program,
Yeah.
why don't we just find out what they've got and just
That's the
assume?
Carlisle way, by the way.
We brought that question to the experts that
Yeah.
are advising us on this, and they said absolutely not. Carlisle's a completely different environment. We see from town to town, area to area, different populations of different species of mosquitoes that carry this
Really?
thing,
Okay.
and different distributions of the viruses. So really, just because we look at what's going on, say, in Bedford, doesn't mean that that's
But how local is
what's
local?
going
I
on
mean,
in Carlisle. So-
I learned when I bought the mosquito magnet, which I no longer use, that the reason why it's effective, the mosquito magnet has that little carbon dioxide tube, is that mosquito populations are intensely local. So if I can deter the population in my own little parcel, 2-acre parcel or whatever, I'm effective, because they don't travel very far. So
Yeah, they
how would this
quarter
work
mile
in
or
that?
something
What?
like that.
No, but I mean, then the same argument could be made that Scott has a problem and I don't, because he lives across town.
It's true.
So, yeah, I can't speak to that
Okay.
because there are different species of mosquitoes that have very different life cycles and different habits. They're not, it's not all mosquitoes are the same. And I learned that from these experts.
So I would just caution, I mean, it sounds like a good thing, but more data is better, but it's what you do with the data, right? So
Exactly.
Well, I think it goes beyond that, because there are times when there's an outbreak of triple E where I think the state comes in and wants to spray.
Yeah,
And you can opt out of spraying
Right.
if you have some means of dealing with the issue yourself.
Right.
If we're not part of a mosquito control
Yeah, we
district,
can't
we
say
don't
that.
have that means.
Right.
And so we might, in fact, end up having the state spray when we don't want them to spray.
right, and we don't want to spray because it's really destructive to the food chain, basically. I mean, it's a
Well-
blunt instrument, right?
They claim it's targeted. So that's a great question too. And we've pushed on that because what their answer is that it's very targeted to those species. And, it's not like a broad spread
Okay.
killer of everything.
Right, okay.
Number one. Number two, there's one point we gotta consider when we're thinking about things like that. People are already spraying everywhere, all around town, and it's completely uncontrolled. It's just, some people think they're getting cedar oil or something sprayed around their yard. They don't know what's in that. And other people may not be looking for the more natural things. They just bring in the contractors to spray. Those aren't regulated. The state doesn't regulate them. The mosquito programs, the state knows exactly what they're using and everything is understood as to the risks of it. So even if there was spraying going on, it's much better to be spraying through that program than each individual in town considering whether they're gonna bring their landscape contractor in to do the spraying. And that's unfortunate. We don't have control over that. And so that is a concern, but that isn't something I think it's gonna get resolved anytime soon. But really, a surveillance program to understand what's going on, because we don't want closed playing fields for the youth in town. if we don't have to. And if Concord's closing theirs, but we know that we don't have the problem in Carlisle, we can say, look, proceed with caution, but as far as the data shows, we're okay to leave fields open. And we'd like to be able to make those types of decisions in an informed way, and that's why we're recommending this.
Thank you. I appreciate you telling us about that, and I hope everyone who's listening learned something. So,
All right, so-
do you need to call your
Yeah,
meeting?
we're gonna close, so can I get a motion to,
I move we adjourn.
and a second?
Second?
All those in favor? Collins, aye.
Erickson, aye.
Keating, aye.
Mariano, aye?
Well, I,
Great. Thank you
Thanks,
all
John.
for
Thank
coming.
you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you for your time.
thank you guys.
All right. Well, now the Transfer Station Action Committee. And action it will be.
Here we go.
All right. Welcome. Thank you. Sorry for our delay, but we've had obviously a lot of interesting discussion, and it's all important.
Nice to see you all.
Thanks. If you would introduce yourself and if you
Yeah.
wanted to make your presentation, or...
Yeah, Ryan, can you put up our PowerPoint?
Sure can.
So I'm Laura Snowden, I'm the chair,
Tom Bellotto, a member,
former chair,
former chair, yeah.
and Ben Sherry, the vice chair, is on Zoom.
Yes. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having us.
You need to open a meeting then.
We don't have a quorum, so I don't think we need to do that.
Oh, you have more...
Six
yes.
members, we need 4 for a quorum, so.
Oh, perfect.
Barney, no, is Barney a real
Can you-
member or a
No,
liaison?
she's just a select board liaison.
Okay.
Can you put full screen and also then go to the next slide?
That's
I'm going to try to be, for the sake of brevity, move at a good pace.
Good.
Because
This was in our packet too, so...
Yeah, she
All
doesn't
right,
talk as
so-
fast as me.
Those are our members. Ben is the newest member. All of us have been there for quite a while. Barney is the select board liaison. I will speak briefly about some of our major accomplishments in 2024 and touch on our 2025 plans, which kind of bleed from accomplishments into plans. So a lot of the same things we're continuing to focus on. And then I'll turn the meeting over to Tom, who will discuss the transfer station permit fee and the transfer station changes. Next. So this is data for the last few years. In 2024, solid waste was reduced from about 1,590 to about 1,550 tons. And over the last 3 years of TSAC's focus, our solid waste has been reduced by 15%, which is consistent with the Mass DEP objective of a 30% reduction from 2018 to 2030. We're way ahead of other areas in this endeavor. So our efforts to promote organic recycling last fall, which brought some of the solid waste numbers down, actually contributed to need for a 7th black earth bin at the transfer station, and should trends continue, we'll capture an additional 10 tons of organic waste. Okay, you can go to the next slide.
I just want to ask a question before you
Sure.
go to the...
You
Well,
can skip
could
that slide.
Can you go back? 'Cause-
Okay.
Okay, the thing that concerns me is that it looks like your recycling is going down at the same
Yes.
time as the other.
It
I'm wondering,
is,
does
and-
that just mean that more
That's
people
actually,
It
are
is.
that's
trucking
that's
that
actually
stuff
a good
out?
thing.
Yeah.
For one, Amazon has made efforts to reduce cardboard content substantially. And for example, I think it's about 10% right now. So cardboard is one where there's just less content in it, and other manufacturers as well. So we believe recycling behavior amongst the town is pretty much near optimal right now, including the local haulers.
Yeah, and I think the use of
Yeah,
paper
and
has
it's really a
gone
question of
down
behavior at source.
remarkably.
And it's
Manufacturers are
not
making
just that
less
it's
dense
being
material.
trucked somewhere else.
No, it's not.
No.
No, it's
Somebody
not.
else's town.
Definitely not.
Okay.
So,
that's-
no, I know, it
that's-
is interesting. So we looked at that, like, how can that be,
Yeah.
you know? But it's good, it's all
Okay.
good. Okay, next. And then you can actually go to the next one, because I basically said all that. So I'm gonna just focus on the top 2 accomplishments. Really put a lot of time into promoting organic recycling or composting. Did a lot of community outreach to encourage people to purchase subsidized yard compost bins. We added a second one, earth machine, which most other municipalities have, and really advertised this program. we reached out about Black Roof curbside pickup and also using the Black Roof bins at the transfer station board. I am actually really, for me, it's a huge victory to say that we sold 34 yard compost bins. Previous years, it was like 1 or 2 every year. So, hey, that was great. And we're gonna keep doing it and, you know, really keep, because I think that's clearly an area we could still do better in. And then Tom in particular spent so much time working with DPW. Also, Gretchen was invaluable and really looking at all the policies and processes around strict enforcement mechanisms, not only for permits, the stickers, but also for local haulers. They created language to close loopholes, to make it, you know, make them have to actually adhere to our policies. And then, as you know, probably there was a lot of emphasis on enforcing, everyone having stickers. We feel like the numbers also came down because people from other towns were using our transfer station. And also to change all the policies. Gretchen really worked hard with Tom on that also. So that's something into this year that we've done a lot of work on. So I think the rest I'm going to touch on in different ways. You could just go to the next slide. So, yep, 2025, we started developing a survey to send out to really understand resident behaviors around solid waste, recycling, composting, and also requests for changes at the transfer station. We'd like to increase the transfer station permit fee, which Tom will talk about. We want to bring solid waste down more, and it will become harder because we've been working pretty hard on this. So organic recycling, bring it down more. That's compost, yard waste, glass crushing. Do you guys know what glass crushing is? I learned. Okay, you all know already.
Well,
I'm a newbie.
I
Anyway.
assume it involves crushing glass.
Well,
Recycling all
right.
kinds of glass.
And
window
let's
glass,
expand that a little bit.
ceramics.
So, you know how all our glass is bottles now?
Yeah.
We're not allowed to put windows in or broken bowls.
Ceramics.
Ceramics. So let's say on a Saturday at the end of the day at the transfer station, in the swap shop, there's a bunch of ceramic planters or something. They would get tossed into solid waste. This way they could get tossed into the glass, and the glass all goes over to hopefully Groton, which has a facility and should be doing it already. And that would bring our solid waste down. It'd be all good. So we're working on that, actively working on that. Large items, I started a section on the website on reuse, and we've listed a lot of different resources for people to get rid of larger items. And people contacted us saying, will you add by charity? So hopefully people will get used to doing that, and some of those things can go elsewhere. And then just source reduction. So we'll just keep chipping away at it. And next slide. Oh, you're already there. Community outreach, again, we would like to do some more around event planning and setting up some sort of best practices for big events, one-time events. Continue supporting DPW with reporting, recycling, hazardous waste, sticker sales and enforcement. Development of plans, which Tom will touch on, for changes with repavement, and also continue to work with ESC on developing invasive plant disposal program, which Concord has, and we'd like to do something like that. Because right now, if people ask, we say, no, you can't compost, you know, your bittersweet. It's like, well, you're not supposed to put it in solid waste. It's like, yeah, I know, but you have to. I mean, what I do is I'll just leave it on my driveway until it all dries out, but then I have to throw it out. So it's sort of a hot topic, and we're going to continue figuring something out. I don't think it's a huge topic, but important anyway. So next slide. I'm going to turn the conversation over to Tom.
Okay, so we are recommending an increase in the transfer station fee from $30 to $50 for the first sticker and $10 to $15 for additional stickers. In terms of the rationale for that, there's really two ways of looking at it. First off, the fee originally started around hazardous waste and then went to covering recycling net costs. Recycling costs have increased in the last 5 years. We have organic recycling of mattresses probably added 15, 16K, and we've had a reduction in the revenue stream from the traditional recyclables due to the recycling market behavior, about, again, 15K. So about a 30K adverse impact on recycling fees. This fee increase will bring in about 35K. However, we are also including in this that we want the sticker Unipay fee to be absorbed by the town. That's about 4K. So bottom line, 35K comes in, 4K covers the fee. The resident pays 50 and 15, not 53 and 1650 or something. And so the town basically offsets the increase in recycling. Recycling market is variable. You know, we're hoping it's going to get better, and most folks think it's going to get better. Is that next year, in 5 years, whatever, but it certainly took a real hit during COVID and may continue to be down for a bit. On the other hand, we may see increased black earth recycling, and that's going to increase our costs. So the objective here is to cover that. And the other thing to keep in mind is that the sticker fee traditionally has covered about 20% of the total burdened operating cost of the transfer station, and this fee will be about 20% of the cost over the next 5 years, for example. So that's the two rationales. So it seems like a reasonable increase. And that's what we're recommending.
So, Tom, first of all, what percentage of the households have a sticker, roughly? Would you say?
Well, only 100 residences in town do not use the transfer station, so it's like 95.
All right.
Yeah.
So why, given the time and effort to process this, why not just put $60 on the tax bill and send everybody 2 stickers when they pay their tax bill?
You could do that. That would probably increase solid waste.
Because why?
Well, I'll tell you why. One of the things we've noticed, you remember a year ago we came here to seek stricter enforcement because we had seen about a 10, 15 ton increase per month. We got that under control.
Right.
Not only that, we're convinced right now that enforcement is the best it's ever been. That we're actually, the reason for a big part of that reduction in last year is enforcement.
Well,
So
you
we
can
believe
still
the
enforce.
Well, no, but the issue is when you proliferate stickers, okay, then more folks, for example, if you give 2 stickers to everybody and somebody's not using them.
We'll give them 1 sticker, but why can't you've got a census, put their ask them in the tax bill, which vehicle do you want, and put the license plate on.
I understand what you're saying, and I don't totally, and I think it makes a lot of sense. The problem you have is if you proliferate what people do around trash is unbelievable. Carlisle is a very affluent town, one of the highest, average incomes in the state. But notwithstanding that, people will import trash. They'll take it from a family member. If you proliferate stickers, you will see an increase.
Well, then don't proliferate, just give them
Well, no,
one.
but if I have 2 resident
Well,
wants
give
2
them one
stickers.
and they have to ask for the second, but my point is that we spend so much admin time on stickers. It's a silly system. If we could be smarter and just say, in the tax bill, have a line item, which vehicle would you like for your sticker? Give us the plate.
Well, there's a different question. If you were to bill them as part of the tax bill for the sticker,
Yeah.
that'd be great.
No, but
But if they
that's
don't
what
want a
I'm saying.
sticker, I wouldn't give the, I think
Well, then they could opt out, I guess they could opt out of the sticker, I suppose, but.
Is that possible even?
Well, we actually looked into that, and I thought that was difficult to do.
It would
If
be
it could be
just as
paid
much
for at the
admin
same
time.
time as your tax bill, that'd be great.
It would not be just as much admin time. There's no way. You have to mail the sticker separate, and we've had this argument with the dispatchers don't want to do it, and Gretchen doesn't want it. It absolutely would be not more work. It would be
Most
less.
of the administrative work is people who would not accept that they only get 2 stickers, that they want to assign it to a certain car. A lot of the admin work is when people come in and they have their car in the body shop, they need an alternate, or they have someone that they're caring for and they need a sticker for disability.
They can do everything you're saying through this tax system, which we already have. We're already sending out the notice.
70 to 80% of people who.
Sticker fee will help. I think being able to get it online and paid by credit card will be that'll be one of the biggest admin.
The admin process has been improved this year. It's a
Ultimately,
lot smoother.
why even need a sticker? I mean, you should just have it on your phone with your license plate or whatever. There's a color code, and you just go, there I am.
So we can't get everyone to buy it online yet. We're moving in that direction, but you will not solve the 20% of people who will not tolerate
True.
an online function. Those are the people going to the dispatch center, the ones who can't purchase it on their own, who wouldn't wouldn't serve well in an automated system. So until that catches up, I think you're gonna have just as much admin, even if you just.
So where is it in this proposed thing? Do we cut out the middleman? In other words, you just direct it to a website, you give your card, and that's the end of it?
Well, no, it's just the same as what we did this year, except instead of the fee being assessed to the resident, it's absorbed by the town. Sandy Nation did confirm that could be done today, and the town would be billed quarterly for that. It is about $4,000 a year that would occur there. I have no problem making it easier to buy stickers, and we actually have, I think the administrative system we have in place now is working pretty well, actually.
Right.
But I have a real problem with proliferating stickers, because we'll have more solid waste, I guarantee you that. They'll get put in place they shouldn't. It's just gonna happen.
So when they buy it at whatever price, let's go with this system.
Sure.
I can't remember now what I do, but you have to put in your plate number, right? Because it's printed on the
Yes,
thing.
yes.
So I could put my cousin's plate number, or is somebody checking to make sure that it's a
They
Carlisle
check to a
resident?
degree, but understand that it's difficult to do. But folks game the system. For example.
I mean,
folks
is
get
that happening? The $50, I'm gonna pay my 50,
Yeah.
but gee, I can get my friend for $15.
Folks
right?
game the system. There are times that the trash station is very busy, and you couldn't possibly check every license plate. And folks know about that, and folks trying to slip in. It happens, I'm just telling you.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's 10, 15 tons a month. It's not trivial.
Yeah, right.
Folks game the system. That's how trash is.
So we just want to make it really easy for the attendants to see the sticker on every
Right.
card and not have to worry about phones
Okay.
or anything
And-
else.
and
Have
Pago-
someone
Pago is off the
full-time
table, right?
at
That's-
you know, in the
Just
booth.
one thing Laura did not say.
Or Pay-T, whatever they
You
call it.
noticed that our trash went down 15% in 3
Yeah.
years. The state of Massachusetts had an objective of 30% over 12 years. We're halfway there. Do you know how much they went down in those 6 years? They went up 3%. They
No.
got zeroed down. And the reason for that is their whole reliance is on Pay-T. Pay-T
Really?
does not reduce trash. That is a fraud.
Okay.
Pay-T transfers trash around. It moves it from, you move it from towns that have Pay-T to towns that don't have Pay-T.
Pay-T is
You move
pay
it
to
from
throw?
municipal to
Pay as you
commercial.
throw.
Pay as you throw, okay.
Yeah, you get a bag. you get-
So that's why they haven't done anything. The reason they're now totally focused on organics, because the only prayer they have to get anywhere near 3% is they can deal with
Okay, all right.
organics, and they're not gonna succeed because it's too small.
All right.
They're gonna be 5%.
So
I
one
yield.
thing I don't think Tom mentioned is that,
The gentleman from Carroll Drive.
That's right.
right, we're signing,
We're gonna go to your house now and just do the stickers. You can fill them out.
so we're signing a 5-year contract, and so this would stay in place for 5 years. So if people say, oh my God, that's a huge jump, well, it's been the same price for a long time, and this will
Well,
not
that's a separate,
change.
5 years, I mean, we typically don't change this every 5 years, but the contract has to do with solid waste, that's a different animal.
Okay.
The 5-year
All right.
contract is wind waste, I mean,
Yeah,
that's.
okay,
that's-
that's what you're saying.
That has no
Right,
bearing
right,
on
right. So
recycling
we're
fees
probably
and stuff
not
like
gonna
that. Yeah,
change it
yeah,
if
yeah.
if
We
our
typically don't
contract's
change
not
this, yeah.
changing.
We're thinking of
Right.
this as a 5-year increase, yeah,
Right, right.
absolutely.
We only pay 20% of the cost, so
I know,
it's,
no, it's a great deal.
well, we're still
If they
paying
ever
full
check-
cost as
change the
taxpayers,
tax
so-
code
Yeah.
so that you could actually deduct the,
Sticker?
no, well, you would deduct your property taxes, then you just have the property
Salt back,
taxes.
yeah.
Salt.
Okay,
Yeah,
we're not gonna
salt.
solve that, we gotta move, make
That
sure
is
we move
cheaper.
on.
Next slide,
Than the
please.
$60.
So anyway, it's up to you folks to
You will-
decide what to do here, obviously, we have no
So what-
authorities.
You will need to approve the sticker.
Yes, I
fee.
have a, hang on.
Yeah,
I got
motion
it.
to.
But is
I
this
move-
for next
Well,
year?
before you vote, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. So the inclusion of the fee, we do not have a budget line item for that. And we would have to pay it quarterly, so we would have to increase the budget. So I'm suggesting to offset that by local receipt projections in order to not
Sorry, I
increase.
lost something
Yeah,
there.
I
We
saw
approve
that.
this what?
So if you include the fees in the
Oh.
receiving, we don't have a line item in the
Do we-
budget to pay the fees.
It's like a revolver, kind of,
We
right?
don't have a revolving account for this anymore.
So how do you
But
handle
we're
it
gonna-
now?
We're gonna get the money.
We don't. So
Right.
the
just
person
don't.
buying it pays for it. So now the town is gonna pay for it. So we're gonna
fee,
get a
the-
bill.
The transaction
The
fee.
transaction
That's
fee,
what
but he
we're
doesn't
talking
have a
about.
line item
Oh,
showing that.
4,000.
I
So
know,
he's
but you're
gonna have to
getting
put
more
that in.
revenue than you pay.
Correct,
Town,
well, it's,
right?
it's a wash, but he's saying you gotta add.
Right.
It's not a wash unless
It's
you
not?
tell me to increase the local receipt.
We will, of course, if we're gonna do 50.
So you would have to increase the projection of local receipts in accordance with the line item.
Of course we will.
I just don't have the authority to do that.
What is
without
the
you.
current, 35? 30, how much is it now?
35.
No, the increase is about 35. Currently, we collect about $48,000, $50,000 in an annual.
No, I mean,
No, no,
per
it's-
each, I was
it's
saying.
35 per permit.
Per
Oh, I'm
sticker.
sorry, 30
Per
per permit right now.
sticket.
Currently,
It's
it's 30.
30.
We're proposing to go to 50, and the second
Okay,
permit
so
is
it's a
currently
60%
10 to
increase.
50.
Do you project a decrease in the number of stickers?
No,
No,
absolutely not.
okay, so there you go. You're gonna get more money.
Are we sure we want it to just be 50? Because, you know, if you're going to make it a bigger fee.
I wondered that too.
And if we are going to
Stay till
incorporate
2
the processing fee, it won't be for everybody, but I don't see why we wouldn't do it 55 or 60.
Well, I like the idea of just not separating out the processing fee. Let us pay that. the town
I
pay.
agree,
Okay.
I agree, but that costs us something, so then, in order to do that, we need to increase the fee. Because
So you're suggesting 55? and
55.
I'm suggesting 55,
And
which would then, you know, it's,
55 and
which-
20, there you go.
because it's a 3% fee normally,
Yeah,
right?
what,
So 55 would certainly cover it. In fact, that's 10%.
It's closer to an 8% fee because it's not just a credit card fee, it's a transaction
Oh, yeah,
processing.
it's
fee.
like
And then
when
there's
you-
the
it's like
cover.
when you
Oh, okay,
take it
so
out.
putting
I
the
think you did
10% up, making it 55 would
You
cover
mentioned
it.
that this would be in line with other towns. What do other towns typically
Yeah, I mean, in
charge?
terms of other towns,
Is it like
the range
50?
of sticker fees is from 0 to 100, because some folks do what Dave said, he
Right.
just put in the fee. Most other towns, almost all others, hit the residents with incremental fees for everything, refrigerators, tires, and all
Okay.
that stuff, which we do
Right.
not do. So, I don't think there's a problem going to 55, it's a big increase, but it'll add 8K. I mean,
In
I don't have a problem
Rockport,
with that. It's not what we
it's
voted.
$136, and it's pay-as-you-go, and then there's incremental fees for
Sure.
everything that you
Sure.
put in. So
Okay.
this is such a bargain, it's ridiculous.
And we'll be the ones getting the
The only bargain in Carlisle.
It's the only bargain in Carlisle.
Barney's on the line. Barney, if you're still there, you wondered if you had any comments, questions, because I think we're slowly moving to a vote here. Wanted to get you back.
Nope, I've been at many of the meetings, and I very much support the increase in the fee, and I think the way we're doing it online makes sense.
Okay, and you support the 55 potentially?
Yeah, and, that's fine. And we're thinking that'll be a 5-year plan,
I
Yeah,
don't know. I wouldn't
basically.
represent that.
Yeah.
and
Can I
leave
ask
the
a follow-up?
second.
You're very much against proliferation of stickers. Should we be increasing or discouraging the additional sticker fee?
What we did in the policy last year is, we don't allow someone to buy more than 2 stickers unless they come to Gretchen with a story. And because the problem is, we were concerned about,
Sure, Gretchen
honestly,
loves
we
that.
were concerned about businesses
Story
using it
time.
for stuff, so,
That's funny,
but,
yeah.
a person having a second, have 2 cars and want to use
Yeah.
both, we're not trying to,
Yeah, I mean, my husband and I each have a
yeah,
sticker.
so we're not trying
And then
to,
Gretchen checks with us, and
Okay.
it's a weird story.
So you wouldn't advocate, would we increase the 15 to 20?
no, I think it's.
Well, that's already increasing, it's
Go
going
for
from
basic.
10 to 15.
Yeah.
Each $5 is worth about 8K, just so you're aware of that.
But I think where this is going is, you don't think that the relatively inexpensive second sticker proliferates out of town in any meaningful way?
No.
It's not gonna, we're not gonna
We-
incur
right
any
now,
more fees.
We now have a very detailed database, Gretchen does, of sticker purchase history,
Right.
so we know what's going on. And right now, the second stickers look very, solid. When we get into 5 and 6 stickers, that's what,
Right,
that's
okay, all right.
less solid.
Got it. Okay.
All right, I move to set the transfer station permit fees at $55 for the first sticker and $15 for additional stickers, as recommended by the Transfer Station Action Committee.
Is this effective immediately, or how does?
It would be next year, I'm assuming.
July
We don't have
1.
a quorum, so we can't.
I think it's,
I recommend
at the
it be-
next cycle, right?
Yeah.
The next
Yeah.
cycle of stickers.
So effective, they run on a calendar year, right?
Well, no, we recommended that you actually increase it July 1.
All right, let's
And
do it.
I'll tell you why, because there's a small number of stickers purchased between July and December. We actually start 2026 December 1, and we'd like to get a little history with the new unit pay system without the fee, just to iron out any things before we get the 1,000
Okay,
stickers.
that sounds good.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I will amend my thing, effective July 1st, 2025.
Second.
Great. Any further discussion? Barney, anything? If not,
Nope, good.
I'll
Makes
move to
sense.
roll call vote, starting with you, Barney.
Arnold, aye.
Model I.
Reed, aye.
Snell, aye.
Trio, aye.
Great. Sticker prints
Get your
went up.
stickers, get your stickers
Get 'em
now.
now.
And to adjust the budget in a tax neutral way.
And
Correct.
yes, and do you want a motion?
I don't need one, I just
Okay,
need a
so,
motion.
yes, there's, and
Just budget.
You do have the
that
authority.
authorization or,
You're giving me the authority.
is it authority to change the budget?
Great. Is there anything else?
Yeah, the
Yep,
draft station
one
changes.
more
that's
slide.
fine.
Last slide, okay. Okay, so there's two separate issues associated with the transfer station. First is the issue of, does the transfer station need to be repaid? It's the belief of the Transfer Station Action
Yeah,
Committee
think.
and the DPW, Jim Hall, that it needs to be repaved, should have been done earlier, and represents a public safety issue. So that, whether or not you do what we want to do, we think that should be repaid. We're pretty much of the understanding it's not going to happen in FY '26, though we think it should, so we're advocating it be done for FY '27. Jim's estimate of the repaving cost currently is at around $250K, which is up from $100K a couple of years ago, as we thought. However, at the time the repaving is done, TSAC views that as a lifetime opportunity to enhance the operation of the transfer station and position it for the next 30 years. And so we're recommending some additional changes, which, in order to really accommodate, require that we expand the footprint of the transfer station by about 15 feet in 2 directions, along Morse Road, Old Morse Road, and behind the extra trailers. That requires a wetlands mitigation study because the entire DPW property is in the wetlands buffer zone. I met with the land committee, and they said we should be able to do that, but you have to do a study to find out what that means and what you really have to do, which will cost about $5 to $8K and take 3 to 4 months. And so we're looking for funding of that wetland study in FY '26, so that the transfer station could be repaved in FY '27. In terms of, if you want to switch to the next slide, that shows the,
Yeah.
we currently have a rough drawing of what we're trying to do, and basically, the addition of the 15 feet in 2 directions allows us to do a couple of things. We add 2 lanes of traffic in each dimension. We can also move the swap shop over off by itself.
Right
That's
corner.
currently where the extra trailers are. The compactors don't move. So basically, the swap shop moves aside, the recycling area becomes more compact, and we add 2 lanes of traffic in both directions. This is our current thought on how to do it. Again, that requires that the footprint be expanded, and we don't know that for sure we
So
can do
the
that yet.
the 3 trailers, the compactors
Don't touch.
don't touch. That's,
Right.
they're frozen in where they are.
Correct. The only thing that has to be done there, Jim informed me that there is maintenance needed on the pits in which the compactors reside.
Yeah.
So there is gonna be some additional expense associated with that maintenance. That has to occur
Is
irrespective.
the 250 paving include grading, like making it less slopey or somehow?
Repair and pave, yep.
Yeah.
That's what Jim estimated.
Yeah.
And is that in our paving plan anywhere?
Okay. Of course not.
The other aspects of this is TSAC's opinion, and also Jim, that the transfer station should be secured. Currently, the fence around that
Fenced,
is
yeah.
broken in those
Right.
places. And so bottom line, TSAC is advocating at the time of repaving, expand it a bit, rebuild the swap shop as it's somewhat larger and have a reuse area where large items can stay there more than overnight.
Yep.
And put a fence around it, probably some cameras.
So the fence is not part of the 250 either? I'm
No,
guessing.
and so we're thinking that the incremental costs of the swap shop, the fence, et cetera, is, another couple $100K. So we're looking at the total project
So
cost.
we should have had this discussion before we voted on $55. Did you mean $155?
You just got an extra 8K, and that's by just chance, happens to be what we need for the wetland study.
This is not in the capital plan anywhere.
I want to know, have you guys looked at the survey plan that was done by the MFC when they were looking to cite the new septic for the DPW? Because that might not need to have another survey done.
Okay, when I went with the land committee there were a whole bunch of folks there from Conscom and all these other places. They felt that, they seemed to be pretty educated on what had been done
Is
there.
that by the Morse building? But that's kind of like back there, but
The area they were most concerned about is behind the trailers, into the wetlands area. The Morse Road is, an old Morse Road they weren't too worried about, but it's.
I'm pretty sure all of that was surveyed by Stamsky and McNary about 5 years ago. And Steve Hinton should have that plan if the MFC doesn't have it somewhere. Because when we were looking to cite the septic, we did all that.
And I know it's separate, but this has to somehow be related to anything we do at the DPW.
Yes. Yes, so I guess what I'm worried about, so why I'm bringing this up, I'm worried about the TSAC going off.
Yeah,
And I understand that, you know, you have these.
I also met with them at the Municipal Facilities Committee, and they were involved in the DPW building thing, and
Yeah.
said that the survey that was done there does not address this area, so we couldn't jump onto that one. So they were unaware of a study that would cover the area we want to expand.
I'm not talking about
Yeah.
the study, I'm talking
No.
about, I can see this becoming a very large, expensive project.
Sure.
That is probably part of the DPW.
Oh, sure.
That's what I mean, is, you don't, like, we
What I'd
have to
like to
get
advocate
these.
for is that you do a full site plan of the entire
Right.
DPW
That's the right-
operation.
that's the right answer.
Which was what we were trying to do when we were doing the site plan to begin with
Right.
for the septic, and we were looking at, you know, trying to, but now I think the whole thing needs to be put back together. And,
Absolutely,
you know,
yeah.
if you do any more studies, it's gotta be as, for the whole
I
site.
think that's right. So that's not a
I
fiscal
can take
26
that to
thing.
the MFC.
Yeah, I think it has-
May
yeah.
not be on the MFC going forward, but whoever are the select board representative.
But that can't be a 26 item, because we would have to put a warrant on it.
Well,
No.
Well,
That's it.
doing a study, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's duly noted, duly noted.
All right,
Let's see what, yeah.
Is there anything else?
No, that's it.
all right.
That's been really helpful.
good.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your work on this.
Did you get a copy of the letter of from the eighth grader who was talking about how, because they were doing civics things, so she wrote to me about the DPW and how she thought it really needed to be repaved. And that she knew that was
Eagle
going to be
Scout
expensive, so
project.
that in the meantime, could you put
Up there in the
coal patch
winter when the
into
ice is
some
on
of
all
the-
around.
the dimples.
Thank you. Thank you. I see Chief Amendola is in our
Patiently waiting.
and Gordon. So why don't we move to those items? Are you here to talk about something in particular? There's also, I
Police
noticed, the
union
contract.
I was just here to say hi.
Oh, good. Hey, welcome.
This relates to 3 warrant articles. So the cemetery improvements warrant article.
Right.
You have the capital article, which includes a couple police items, and then the police
Oh, yeah.
station renovation.
Yes.
Those are the immediate things to talk about.
All right, let's do it.
Great.
Let's
So
go,
we're gonna move to the.
Bring 'em up.
let's just do that.
Um,
I think it's really
Why don't we
important
start
to
with,
get that done
why don't we
tonight.
start with Chief? Yeah. Why don't you come forward, please, Chief?
No.
Yeah. So, Ryan, do you want to kind of shape
So what do
the
we,
discussion of what we're going to talk about these particular warrant articles? Is that?
Yeah, so the chief wasn't here for the discussion of 3 of the capital items, the drone, the signboard. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the third one, the
Drone
CAD
cyber
system.
CAD system,
So those items, we got new information about the police station building renovation, which is one of the articles. And the costs, the bids come in, so those are the items to discuss with the chief. I know the finance committee is looking for your opinion on the police capital, and then, of course, we're gonna talk about the building.
Yeah, we talked about this at our last meeting, but are there questions? We did get the updated information. Thank you for
Oh,
the
good, yeah.
drone. It's helpful to know
Yes, absolutely.
the insurance.
On Friday, okay.
But it's a rotary. When I made my comment, I thought it was a fixed-wing drone, but it is a rotary drone. Your guys confirmed that, right?
Yeah, Officer Cornwood.
All right, so it shouldn't be as big a deal, I guess. Yeah, they're very excited about that drone.
He's actually an operator too, so we have.
No, I know he is,
two.
he's got his license.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's doing a great job, by the way.
Oh,
on
good to
that,
hear.
Oh, yeah, it's great. It's really interesting.
Good, I'm
Yeah.
glad to hear that. It's been quite the undertaking, so.
Yeah. We're part of this police academy thing. It's
Yeah, I
Wednesday
think
night.
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
I wish I'd had it when I was a young cadet.
Yeah.
Barney, did you have any questions on this? Relative to the police items, which were the CAD system, the drone, or the signboard?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Okay, great. Well, as I was looking over the request for various items from other departments as well, I thought, given where we are in terms of we're over our, goal of getting to a 3% tax increase. While I certainly appreciate the importance of having a drone added to the police department's, equipment, and also the signboards, I think those are items that, while useful, are not essential. And I think the CAD system absolutely is essential. So I would support that, and I would not support the other two at this time.
I guess I kind of feel a little bit the same way. And then also because of, I think it's really more important for us to get this construction done. And if we're going to save some money, I really want to get the money, push the money around towards the construction to make sure that we get that construction done first.
You're talking about the police
Yeah.
station construction?
Yeah.
Just
because I got to this point, how long ago, 5 years ago, and we didn't go forward, and I just don't want to see that happen again. And a lot of
You can't
resources are
equate-
going towards the police, and if
You
these
can't
are not-
equate the hundreds of thousands of dollars of construction overage with.
Well, but
like
the
a
thing
little
is
drone.
that, I can't also feel good about putting so many resources into one department that seem to be more nice to haves rather than need to haves. But what the real need to have is also the building. So I'm trying to look at the whole picture of what the whole department is getting.
Oh, still needed, but not at the moment.
Yeah, I'm not saying, yeah.
Yeah, if it was.
It'd be nice to have it
kinda
this
like-
year, but it would.
And it's on the radar screen now.
It's on the radar screen, and it can get into the queue like all the other things.
Yeah, it was on, I think the signboard was there previously. I don't think that's
No.
Was that?
The signboard was not.
Oh.
In my defense, I was here just a few months when I
Yeah,
created
what-
the 5-year capital plan, so needs populated as I decided to sort
Yeah.
them through. So that's why it's new this year, but,
I get it.
but that's my defense.
But you put drone as the top, right? Or somebody?
CAD RMS system as the
CAD
top
is
priority.
CAD is
RMS.
Yeah, because we won't communicate if that goes down.
That's correct, yeah.
So
That'll be the top
I
one.
think
Right.
that, Barney kind of led this, and I tend to think that the same way, that it seems like that's the way that we should head, is CAD systems essential, and these others, at some point are going to be needed, but maybe not this year because of what we're dealing with.
A question. One of the, if I'm remembering correctly, one of the points that was raised was that some of the cost of the drone could be potentially offset by, was this point made about sharing the resource with other communities that might not have the drone or might need assistance? We didn't really get into it. I didn't know if there was a way, if you're looking at the cost, is there any realistic way to defer the cost or offset the costs through other towns, or if we're giving mutual aid using the drone, is there a benefit to Carlisle from other towns?
So the unfortunate part of that is we wouldn't charge another town
Right.
as mutual aid because we may
Right.
use something of theirs, and
Right.
that kind of deflates the whole mutual aid sharing of resources.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
probably not.
okay. And then there's also the question of the insurance cost. I'm trying to remember if we actually,
It wasn't that much, though.
it wasn't that much, okay.
It's about 1,000, so we sent you an estimate, it was about 1,000 a year,
Or less, yeah.
or less.
I think what's important, though, for the select board to remember, and I'm on the same page, but to say, oh, we'll look at it next year is not realistic, because next year we're actually going to be dealing with the financial impacts
Yeah.
of the police station renovation, potentially a fire station renovation, and we know it's not like there's going to be suddenly a lack of capital items where, so I think it would take some change in our requirements to make this a higher priority. So I agree with you. I don't think it's realistic to say, well, we'll look at it next year, because I think it's going to be even harder. I think we're going to be in a much tougher place next year when we're looking at these competing items, given the burden on the taxpayer as some of these debt payments come due. I mean, you just look at those numbers, and the next 3 years is going to be really challenging for non-essential items and services.
But
Yeah, but
Non-essential,
No, I-
that's the operant word.
Yeah, no, and I agree. I just want to make that point. I don't
Yeah.
want to set false expectation that suddenly we're
Yeah.
going to, put it off a year, or not just this item, but any item that's not essential or expanding the service in some respect of what the town government does. It's going to be very difficult over the next several years as we bring on these building projects. And I think, in fact, we're going to have
more
to.
difficult to the tune of 400K 5 minutes ago. We're gonna pave the.
Well,
and
we're
add
going to
a
have to
fence.
decide, I think, well, discussion for another day, maybe the next meeting is, I think we're going to have to start very soon looking at where we find efficiencies and actually get smarter or more productive about how we provide services, given the additional costs we're going to be bringing in.
I mean, Scott, we've been saying that for as long as I've been around this town.
Well, I wasn't on the
If I'm-
He's saying.
Do I understand this correctly, though? The police station, are we now at 3.7 plus more content? Are we at $4 million bucks? I mean, that's kind of what I'm getting, what I'm hearing.
I can bring that up.
And you have to bring up Neil's.
Yeah, if you want to walk us through how we got there.
So what you're seeing in column B is the estimate you received from TBA right before town meeting.
And that's, we voted that, right?
Which was voted. The C column is the bid that came in. So the actual prices compared to what was estimated. So the biggest drivers in increase was the cost of construction. That was offset slightly by the contingency, or 2/3 of it. And then.
We'll say that again?
So if you look, the estimate was a little over 3 million with a close to $250,000 contingency, and
Right.
the actual bid came in at.
But with zero contingency, but is that?
He used it.
Is that right? Or you
So they
still
don't
need
include so that contingency was at cost escalators for the time of bidding.
for bidding, but it doesn't, there still need to be a, okay, keep going, I'll come back.
So cost of construction, you don't need that contingency anymore because this is an actual bid.
Right.
Furnishings is they're necessary, but it's not purchased yet, so that's why it's its own category. So you can
Okay.
not do that, you could lessen that cost. The architect fees include some of the work we did to get a rebate, which I'll talk about. The OPM fee was the largest miss in the estimation, so the OPM we hired was $218,000, and
That is Neil and his
that is Neil and team. Yes.
Yep.
So the total was $216,000 if you include all those lines
Yep.
over the bid.
Yep.
If you include alternates, which is the 4 alternates that were part of the bid, it's $296,000. So there's a couple things to consider. So first of all, we're creating a community room, and we're advising that become a backup Clark room, for lack of a better term, which would mean we can use PEG funds to install some of the technology and other things that would make that a usable backup to this room. So we can use PEG funds, and then Sarah and team worked hard on making sure that we secured rebates up front for a lot of the HVAC installation, so that's another $60K. So the total we're expecting to come off that is $83,000 in other funds, potential other funds, which means the delta is now $132,000, or with alternates, $212,000.
Can you remind us the 4 alts?
Yes, I'll need a minute, though.
Okay.
I'm going to also be meeting with Kelly at the end of this week to review the current state of the ARPA funds. If you recall,
Oh, yeah.
any unexpended ARPA funds would be redistributed to project OPMs. So
We aren't past the sell-by date of those?
no, the votes in December allow us to transfer funds. So there may be some relief there. I have to go through those. Like, there's $30,000 in funding for the grant elevator, which I don't know if it's being so there may be some, either a little bit or.
Okay.
Still stay on the grand elevator and we get some, yeah.
I won't know till we sit down with that. I don't think it's going to be
Feels
big
like
money, but it's a
pushing with
little bit.
Play-Doh, you
It's
know?
a little bit.
Every little bit.
So the alternates include interior finishes,
Yeah.
heat at the new storage garage, heat at the Sallyport, and casework.
Interior finishes, I miss, is that the furniture, but you've already counted that.
No, it's
No.
flooring and
Oh,
paint.
floor and paint.
It's
sorry.
paint.
It-
And as I recall, some of those finishes were for energy efficiency, not just, no, none of them were. They were just,
So we were expecting maybe a potential problem with cost, so these were pulled out of the bid as alternates, so you could say yes or no.
Do we have any issues with some of these, like heat in the Sallyport garage, if the garage is open in the middle of winter and then we have pipes freeze up or something like that? I mean, are there, or can we do this without? They're alternates, so obviously we can live without it. But I just don't wanna, I don't wanna be
Right.
penny wise, pound foolish
Yes.
here on some item that we say, oh, well, we can.
Andrew, is Sallyport presently heated?
So it depends, it can be, so, but the way that it's set up, the Sallyport is going to be off of the booking room. So realistically, what happens is the prisoner transport car brings the prisoner in and then takes the prisoner from there into the booking room, which is obviously heated, so, that's kind of why we listed it a little bit further down in the alternates, because.
People are not hanging out in the Sallyport then?
No, no.
Okay, so.
So maybe good.
they used to have to clean their guns in there, so they did, but they've got to do that somewhere
Right, so
else.
that's a little bit of money. It's not shown here. The alt is not identified as a separate
So the,
line, but I guess we can do
if
our
you
own
accepted
math.
all the alternates, this would be the number.
It's 80,000 of alts, is what you're saying.
So we're talking, what?
But we're not done yet, Kate.
Okay, well, I'm
So let's
looking
go
in
to
terms of
Neil's
percentage.
email. Neil writes, in terms of sharing my perspective on contingency, for a typical renovation project, we recommend, and this is after the bids came in, we recommend a minimum of 10% total project value, blah, 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 blah. The town may want to consider a higher contingency, closer to 12 to 15%, based on the review of the attached spreadsheet, I think this one. It looks like the sweet spot is somewhere in the 375 to 450K. So you zeroed it out, but I don't think it gets zeroed out, right? It becomes a different, not a bid contingency, but an execution contingency.
So the top is only so you can compare the estimate to the bid. Now you have to consider the contingency on top.
Right,
right.
exactly. So I say again, are we at a $4 million rental? The answer is yes.
With contingency, yes.
Well, you know, we gotta go to the town. We can't go every, you know, we go to the town, we ask for more money, right? We're asking for, we were, you know, what's his name, Nathan, you know, pounded the table, 3 million, we crept it up, and then we went back again, somehow in the noise, it got to 3.5, and now we're saying 4.
Well, as I recall, Nathan, when we were at 1.8 million, didn't want to spend the extra $200,000 then, and that's why we're here.
I don't wanna tattoo poor Nathan, he's on free income, he can live with his.
Well-
What's the two, oh, I don't know.
But I mean, the point is that, I go back to Scott's point, I mean, it's 4 million for the rental, right? So we haven't even got to the fire station.
So the options are, don't do the project, obviously, that's an option. So in a project solution that doesn't impact any of your reserves or anything like that, but impacts taxes, would be to debt exclude the difference, to include the contingency. So you could ask for another ballot in debt exclusion. Or you can use reserves. So the one piece that you did put away for the future was capital stabilization, which hasn't been included in your reserve calculations, which is 300,000. So you have that available.
It's not part of the 12%?
It's not.
Wow, use it up in the first year.
I have an issue with this whole thing. I went back and I looked at the town meeting, I looked at the materials, I looked at the presentation, and it was presented a very specific number to the town for what the project was cost. There were no disclaimers about, well, we might be coming back next year, it might be whatever. And I get things happen, but I think we gotta bring, whatever number we decide, we gotta bring it to the town, we gotta have them either vote it up or vote it down with the new number, because I don't think getting town approval on this number and then working all this other stuff without the same level of approval is appropriate. And I don't-
If you do exclude one way to accomplish that, I don't know how to do
But
it.
I think the town we need to present them the new budget and the plan and have them.
Is the rest of it all excluded debt? It is, right? Because it's a
Yeah, it's excluded
construction
debt.
project, right?
The 3.5 is
Right.
excluded.
So to Scott's point, would you just declare that null and void and put a fresh number out there? I do like the idea of forcing it into a town ballot. Not just town meeting, people raising their hands, but make people vote it. Like, make them vote it the next week.
Because we're also going to be going back to the same town with another project, and the logical question will be, well, you're telling us it's going to cost this, you're going to be back next year.
Credibility's gonna be crap.
Right.
It will be crap, because we're already like way over.
I think it's fair to say this is the reality, and we're not trying to find an easier path to get the total project approved now. It's the same level of scrutiny and support. Not great, but
Kate?
Well, you know, first of all, I think it's really unfortunate, because I think we've had inflation, and when I look at it, it's a 10%, the actual bid is 10% higher than the estimate, which is actually not that hugely different. We've had other years, in fact, the first time we went through, it was like double what we thought it was going to be. So I think we're getting better at this. But
was not presented that way, though.
But I understand, and I totally hear what you're saying.
And I think we
But I
need to.
do think it's important to because last time we didn't even present a choice to the town, the first time around. It did not go back to the town for their approbation of the extra money. For the extra money, it was just killed right here in this room.
You mean in the 1.8 or?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm still
Okay, so we
smarting
own
about.
that, right.
So I agree with Scott, I think it has to go back to town meeting, it has to be presented properly, but at least the town has to have the choice of making, it should not be killed here.
No, I agree, we're not
No,
killing,
I'm
we're not gonna
Well,
kill
I'm
it.
not suggesting
no.
that.
Well,
I think we have to give guidance on what the ask is, right?
Yes.
Right.
Well,
But I think it's
last
important.
time we didn't even ask, that's what I'm saying.
Well, I guess from a process, and
That's double now.
a process question as we look forward to, as we discuss this, and we also look forward to the fire station discussion, is how do we avoid this where, and I know there's inflation, but there's going to continue to be inflation. I don't know how the OPM number is so far off. And are we going to be dealing with this same situation again? Something wasn't working right in terms of either the estimate or how it was presented to the town. How do we avoid that with the next project?
So the only way to avoid it is to bid it. But you're gonna pay
Yes.
a couple $100,000 up front to bid it.
That's right, you bid it before
You
you
can
go
only
to.
bid with construction documents. So if you look at all the towns that are considering it, and I'm not justifying
Well,
it.
there's another way to avoid it is to tell the town, this is the estimate, this will go out to bid, we may be back here next year, or or, here's our estimate, and we want approval of 4 million because all these other things. My worry is you get approval on something, people go, okay, 3 million, and then you're back next year and you're moving things around and you feel like.
Well, it's not only that, but if you say, I mean, if you broadly say that this project is going to be, like, what was the original one, 3.2 or 3, what was the first number? I know 1.8.
I mean,
Three-ish.
on this,
What?
on this iteration?
Yeah, in this iteration, was it
Yeah.
3? We went in
No,
at
it was
3 or
no,
3.2?
3.2 or something.
Okay, so if we're almost $1 million over, if you take his 375, well, let's just use the one that, well, maybe you're right at 4 million. You're gonna be at 4 million, so you're 800,000, so you're actually 25% higher than you came in. So now if you leverage that up to the police station, the fire station, then that becomes a $12.5 million.
Potentially,
project.
yeah.
Well, you have to assume it's gonna repeat. And so then, and the bigger picture, which I know we all struggle with, is the DPW shed and the this and the
All
that.
of it, yeah.
And we don't have any money for any of that. And I don't know how to really square up to that problem. I just don't. I don't even know what to say about it. Like, unless we say we cut the line, like, I mean, there's one thing to say, like, we made public safety a priority,
Mhm.
and we're doing these projects, and then that's it. The window's closed for a while. I'm sorry, Jim, I'm sorry.
Well, DPW could be considered public
It's public
safety.
safety.
And so, you know
It's
what?
like the Board of Health saying everything public health.
I'm not justified, but I
Right?
do
You're a
think
nuisance.
we're on the right path, David. We
I know.
we finally got a capital plan. We're doing better than we did as a town.
Yeah.
And you know, you just solve these things one step at a time. You can't get overwhelmed by
No,
the whole
that's true,
thing.
that's true.
I would recommend that, going forward, we do spend the money up front to get the bids in before town meeting. If this is gonna be a problem, I think this is the way to do it. Because we used to do it that way, we've
So
done
where do
it
you
that way
find
in
the
the past.
200K to get the drawings done and stuff?
Well, same way we got them this way, this time.
So you ask, in one town meeting cycle, instead of asking for, I don't know, 100K for a study or whatever we do, you ask for like 300K, study and drawings.
So the fire station is an example of that. So
Yeah.
you are doing the full design up
Yeah.
to construction documents. And then
Right.
the plan was to bid it
Okay.
so that you bring a full number.
So that will be a
That's
higher
right.
fidelity
Yes,
bid.
it will be.
But either way, I'm not trying to justify it, but either way, you're paying that 300 grand.
Of course, you're paying
Either
it.
you're paying it up front to be sure, or you're missing and having to ask for that 300 more.
And I'd rather pay it up front and be sure,
Yeah.
because I think just from a transparency, credibility standpoint, the town needs to know that what they're voting for, either it's gonna come in at that, or if it's not, they still have the same say to approve, like, the project changes fundamentally to me when the budget changes that much. And so, I'm not saying they wouldn't support it, I don't know, but I think it's important to go back and not feel like, oh, we got this when we went to ballot and it was important to do a debt exclusion, we got that validation. Now we're gonna use some offset funds, we're gonna use reserve, and now we just need another 200 grand, and we're not gonna do a debt exclusion, but it's still a formally, it still would leave a bad taste in my mouth as a resident of you're trying to pull one by me. And I know that's not the intent, but we just have to be very careful with all these projects that were as transparent and above board and straightforward.
All right, Barney, you're on the line, and do you have any comment on this?
I would say that I think we should be very straightforward at town meeting about how this has happened and what we need in order to go forward. And I think we just also acknowledge that how difficult it is to estimate, a year in advance of what you're going to actually need, and we're trying to figure out a way to do this better the next time around. The other thing I'd say is, I think it just forces us to take a really hard look at, what is absolutely essential in the fire station, and similarly for the DPW. I mean, I just think we have to be more rigorous about eliminating all but what is absolutely essential.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Well, we have a lot to cover here. I don't think I want to kind of continue this. I think the bottom line, though, is that from a warrant standpoint, the drone and the signboard, I just don't think is gonna be.
Gonna fly.
Thank you.
No pun intended.
It's not gonna fly. Thank you. And now, we have to deal with the police station as
Yeah.
far as this, and it seems like.
I think, and we're also gonna be asking for money for a fire station design. So these are two things we
Yeah.
have to think about of how we present these things, right? In terms of,
I think we're pretty unified, though, on
Okay.
that.
Yeah,
At
I
least
think
from
so,
this
too.
discussion, it seemed like everyone was.
The only other thing, though, that I think we need to talk about is for the extras. The extras will cost more if we don't do them now. If you find that you need to heat the,
Well, we
The
should
shed
let
for
the,
whatever
we should let the
reason.
OPM earn his $218,000.
well, the thing is, are they necessary or not? I guess,
That's what we pay him for, so let's.
Okay.
The police station renovation building committee is meeting next week to discuss the alternates.
Yeah.
Make
right.
a recommendation to.
So what we need, I think, as a select board, is we need to know what's absolutely necessary or not.
We can make a statement to that committee to say
Yes.
that we're looking at the bigger picture and we're now feeling the real pinch of the fiscal pressures that are coming down, and we're.
Yeah. Because if we
Do you
get a.
wanna
subs-
do that?
I would like to do that, because if
Okay.
we get a substantially better police department without those alternates, then we're much closer to the mark than with the alternates, right? I mean, that was couple hundred, $300,000 for the total for the alternates.
Well, they're not monolithic, but there's 4 different ones.
Well, I know,
But again, we got people who are gonna study that, right? So let them come back with their estimate. But, I mean, I agree as it stands now, alts are alts for a reason, as you said, right? Because they're not being
so if we-
critical.
Right.
either
Unless
that,
you,
or
do
we
you
say,
have a
we
particular
strip
one
them
that
out.
you feel?
Well, we hemmed and hawed a little bit with, as a committee on, deciding those factors, but, we did prioritize them. So, when we looked at the grand scheme of things, we did look at the big picture. We're trying to solve a longer problem here than just a couple of years and coming back and saying, well, actually, we need to renovate these rooms now too. So that's mainly the reason we put the number 1 priority is to renovate those spaces so that we're not coming back when those,
Of course, you put them on the capital plan.
Yeah, you can always do it. Hey, Ryan, so
Well-
1, 2, 3,
Sounds
4,
like
5.
that, I mean,
It's so-
I see 8. Did you get 8 bids? And you picked the lowest, is that?
You have to. Pick the lowest.
Okay.
And
He
you
doesn't
vetted
operate
them.
in Massachusetts.
That's the bathrooms.
The bathrooms, oh, that's different.
But I mean, they carry with them the MEP and all that, everything, like, this is the GC?
everything.
This is all in? Okay.
All right, we have a lot to cover, and I know there's some more people who've joined in because we're going to be talking about other things like other warrant articles and whether we include them or not. But Gordon, you're here. Would you like to?
Do we need Andrew? Anyone?
We're all set, I think.
All right.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Chief.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for staying.
Take care.
Yeah. So Gordon, if you want to come forward, I know you have an important role here with the cemetery.
Well, I haven't received a lot of steering on what I'm going to talk about, so I'm open to questions. I don't come with an agenda. I'm here at your pleasure.
Okay. Well, we had, this was one of the warrant articles we were considering is, whether to spend the money for the ground penetrating radar, all the
all of
different
that.
components of it. And I think that, we need to make a decision as a board here as to, again, how we want to approach this.
So if it might help, in the town meeting marketing plan that Ryan sent out, there were some helpful hints about thinking about what you're offering as something for the town. Why this? Why now? What's the importance of it? That sort of thing. So I did put some notes together that kind of cut down our former presentation. So I can offer that as sort of the kernel of what we're looking for in this warrant item, if that's helpful. So if you recall, the request of the select board to the cemetery task fund was sort of broad, but really it's about operation and it's about how sound is the operation and are there areas that would need to be remediated in a sense by any kind of software. So we found a bunch of things that we're going to set aside that we're calling our recommendations that the task force is still looking at now and focus on what the software would solve, because that's the line item that we're talking about for $40,000. So I've sat with Jim Hall several times, and most recently looking through some situations he's dealing with right now, and what he has to do to determine a grave suitability is he looks in these ancient ledgers that are from the 1950s onward.
Yeah, we went through
and
those.
he saw that, and he has a master sheet too, and he compares them, and they're not the same sometimes. He doesn't know sometimes why this one has a not usable mark in one area. So there's some ambiguity there, and those situations come up quite often. those could be ironed out and put into this software, and that would, in the future, make that process more stable, more accurate, more reliable, but also more replicable. Anybody not at a senior staff level could be using that system, and it wouldn't take up nearly as much time as it does now for Jim to make those burial decisions. It would also ensure that we have a succession plan in place for the next cemetery supervisor, who wouldn't be able to probably decipher these various decisions that were made over time. This happens in every cemetery we've talked to. Cemetery supervisors have to make decisions based on what they're dealing with that day and that time. This isn't unusual at all. That's why they're all going to software, to solve that problem going forward, but to straighten it out from the back end as well, and also to preserve historic information.
I think we got all that. How much is it?
40,000.
A year or
No,
just once?
That's a one-time setup cost, and it's 2,000 yearly support cost.
And do we know, is any of this eligible for like CPA or anything like that, or
We
just?
did look into that, and it's not. There's a provision in the CPA about creation of something which cannot be supported by CPA funds, and we are creating software. A little bit of a technicality, but it's
Well,
there.
that's what the CPA is all about, technicalities. Right? There's all these little.
Yes.
The bottom line is it won't qualify.
Excuse me?
Yes.
We can't make it qualify, is what you're saying.
That's correct.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Barney hath spoken, okay.
Barney, yeah.
All right, well,
Thanks, okay.
I
And
think-
that's a warrant, that's currently a warrant article, potential warrant article,
Mhm.
and it's financial, so we should.
it would be nice if we knew what the payback was in terms of how much of Jim's
Dead people.
time. Yeah, well,
Not that kind of.
One of the things we're trying to do here is to really ask our remaining questions of any of these applicants or people who want money or want select board
Yeah.
support, or talking about warrant articles, what to include or exclude from this upcoming spring town meeting. So,
I
So
just
like
was
at the-
wondering if there was any discussion of the fees that are currently, charged for cemetery, for plots
Yes.
and things, and if we should be considering augmenting some of those in order
Yeah,
to
we are
offset
having
some of these.
that discussion. That's not this question, though.
Well, it's a question of my mind,
Oh,
because
sure.
I want to know,
We understand that.
are there any
Yeah.
offsetting fees that we could be starting to charge that would be paying for this, so that the cemetery then, this is not coming out of the taxpayer's pocket,
Yes.
but it's coming out of the cemetery user's pocket?
Yes, we already have done a benchmarking with other cemeteries around here, for example. We know we're under most rates, so yes, that's an opportunity we're looking at, surely.
So that's,
yeah,
That-
you're dying for answers, aren't you?
well,
Well, if there's such a thing as a cemetery revenue bond, we could float that. But the revenue could be pre-refunded very quickly, I don't think.
Did we raise the plot rates?
We did
No.
previously 2 years ago or a year ago.
it wasn't,
It was before me.
yeah.
We-
It
No,
wasn't
I
the
was
plot
on-
rates, it was the,
There's
the-
two components to
it
the
was the actual interment rate.
internment rate, yeah.
Maybe we
All right,
should raise it.
I think, do you have any other questions, Barney? Do you have any questions? You're familiar with
No.
this, with the CPC?
Well, very quickly, so why now question is, if for some reason Jim took a job in another town, for example, or the ledger books caught on fire, we'd
Well, I hope he
be,
has a backup, he should be scanning those,
yes,
like now.
but his knowledge is the key.
Well, I know that, but
So
same
to
was
capture
true
that-
of his predecessor.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, fair enough, but.
All right, thank you. There are some others who've joined online, and I know they've reached out
Sorry to
regarding
make you wait.
various articles, and we're running late because this evening we've had lots of discussion about a lot of these articles as well as other things going on in town. So, but one of the bylaws under consideration at the upcoming for the warrant is the demolition delay bylaw. I'm going off the top of my head if that's the official name.
Yes.
And I see that Ben Herter is on and Chrissy O'Shea, and I didn't know if they wanted to take 5 minutes max to tell us more about that for our consideration of that.
Sure. Thanks, Travis.
Sure.
Well, as you know, we're hoping to come back and speak with you guys on the 8th of April as well.
It may be tight, that's why I'm trying to.
Yeah, yeah. So we don't have a, thank you for the notice to join the meeting tonight. We don't have a presentation necessarily to share with you this evening, but high level, yes, we are proposing a demolition review bylaw for Springtown meeting. And, high level, this is really for the protection of historically significant buildings and structures that are not in the historic district, the established historic district, which accounts for roughly 2.5% of the buildings in town. It's only about 51 properties. There are a number of historically significant properties that are outside of the district that are not protected in any way from demolition. And we have been witnessing in recent months that there have been a number of properties that have been impacted by this. We've had full demolitions, partial demolitions that have occurred in town, and so we feel that there is an urgency to establish a demolition review bylaw in Carlisle, and to have it be consistent with other towns. We are one of the only towns in the Metro West area that does not have a demolition review bylaw. We shared a map with you previously showing that we are sort of an island. There are neighboring towns that have demolition review bylaws, demolition delay bylaws. They, different names for it. So we are requesting presence on the warrant for this spring to propose this bylaw to the town. There's a lot more detail to that.
No, it's a good summary.
Yeah, I guess I would like to add also that, it's been a very helpful process to start to socialize this with you guys, the planning board, other groups. We've been getting a lot of great questions from people, and through that process we've developed an FAQ document that we have uploaded to the Historical Commission website. So if anybody in the public has some queries about what the demolition review bylaw is all about, we'd like to, at this point, direct them to the Historical Commission website.
That's a really great approach. David, since you are in charge of this study committee of the, and you're really focused on how this town meeting's going to play out. How are we doing relative to the length and how we're going to have to think about, not only just on this bylaw, but in the one of the reasons that this came about, this whole discussion. I mean, this is obviously important to the select board, just in general with the bylaw, but the timing of the bylaw as far as in the spring and then the fall.
I believe it has to be in the fall. And I'll say that for two reasons, and I know Ben's working hard on this and his whole commission. Number one is, yes, the volume of things we have to do. What do we have, how many warrant articles?
35.
I mean, it's a lot of warrant articles. The ADU bylaw will be a time sink. I think the TA bylaw will be a time sink. And I think now, as we get into these capital projects, there's going to be some rigorous debate on that. And we typically have, on those, we typically have put the financially impactful issues in the spring so that it fits with the following budget cycle as compared with the fall. The elephant in the room for the fall town meeting is MBTA, and that will be lengthy. But I believe I can speak for the committee that we all feel like any discretionary bylaw type articles should be pushed to the fall at this point. Separately, well, go ahead.
The MBTA bylaw, though, does have some relevance to this Springtown meeting, because there's the warrant, the petition
There'll
for
be-
the
there'll
consultant.
be
and
arguments,
that could
yes.
lead into a longer discussion about it.
All of
if-
which it says it's gonna be a long
Right.
spring meeting. The other thing, and I don't wanna say, I'm careful with City in the Woods in terms of, I certainly don't personally ever weigh in.
Right.
And I wouldn't advise any elected official to weigh in. But it's a reasonably good barometer of the temperature of various issues of those who care enough to comment. And the comments have been overwhelmingly, this is not fully thought out. What about this? What about this? What about this? It's gonna take more work to determine, and I don't wanna get into it with Ben right now, he may come in front, but I believe, from what I read and what I understand, that there's considerably more vetting of the nuances of that thing before it's ready to be presented at town meeting. And Ben, I would just give you some advice, which is, it's better to delay than get denied, because if it goes down, it will be many cycles before you can bring it back up. Whereas if you go through it and you really think about, and I'm sure you read all those issues yourself, you've got to pay attention to that stuff and address them, and like we're doing with the TA bylaw, we have to craft
We
these
have to.
things so that it has a good chance of passing. Because if it doesn't, besides being a time sink, people will just maybe say, you guys haven't figured it out. I'm gonna say no until you figure it out. And then you have to wait like 2 or 3 years before you can bring it back up. So it's my strong recommendation that get pushed to the front.
Barney, did you have something you wanted to say at this point,
You'll
or
be drinking wine when you
anything to add?
But-
I don't know. Okay, well, she's still muted, so I don't know if she's allowed to. Barney, is there anything, I know you're, okay, well, Kate?
I agree.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, I know Ben and Christie have been working on this a lot, but if, you know, what David's saying, makes a lot of sense to me, and I know it's really challenging for the commission because, you know, the concern is there may be a couple of residences that are being considered for demolition between now and the fall. I don't know if there's any short-term authority or way you could, you know, have some sort of temporary, it sounds crazy, but not an injunction, but, you know, do you have any authority to sort of hold up somebody considering a demolition over the summer? Anyway, I do think, though, that David's making important points about really getting around and talking to all the kind of relevant boards and committees. And I know, Christie, I think you wrote me about having an open community meeting, and that's a really good thing to do too, but it's awful close to Maytown meeting, you know, to be doing this at this point.
Yeah. I feel like it's too compressed. The timeline is too compressed, and you'd be much better off in the fall. You can have, you know, forums and bigger, you know, presentations.
It's more complex than it appears.
Yes, it is, and, you know.
Especially if you use the 50-year mark, which
Well, my house was built in 73.
sweeps in, yeah.
Yeah, it's like.
If you were to say 100 years, or I would say fine, but
Or even 75 years.
50 years is going to sweep in a lot of houses, and a lot of people are going to have issues. So we owe it, I think we owe it to those owners to think through that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just briefly, I was at the last meeting where they reviewed this. They used the questions that were asked there to populate parts of this FAQ. I thought there was some feedback. There wasn't a lot of people there at that meeting. I thought there'd be more.
Which meeting was that?
This was their last, where they reviewed this. And so it was and I know they were planning, and I don't know, a public hearing in a week or so. I did ask the question of, is there, aside from just, you know, the risk of losing more structures that might be historic, is there something going on that would really dictate a need for this now? And I don't want to answer for you, but I think the answer was no, but obviously, you we've lost some structures that we might want to have kept, and the longer we push this out, you risk losing more structures. But it wasn't, my question was more around, is there some regulatory change or something that we know is about to happen that where we really need to act? And I don't want to speak for you, but it didn't sound like that was the case. It's more just the risk of losing more structures in the interim.
To give you an example of what has occurred recently is we lost a historic barn structure on Maple Street recently, and it was applied for demolition early December, and the structure was gone and a new foundation and building was being put up by mid-February. So there really wasn't the time to reflect on its historical significance in town and to kind of register that. It was just, in effect gone in the blink of an eye. And so we're concerned that that will happen to other structures moving forward, and we're certainly keeping an eye on, historic properties changing hands, because those are thresholds that when that happens, there is the chance that something might be lost.
Okay. Well, I think we've tried to, Ben, I know you reached out, and I'm trying to, do my best to guide all these different boards and committees and, through this process. And you've at least heard, I think, from the select board now on how we're approaching it.
Okay.
May not be what you're looking for, but at least I'm trying to give you an answer.
Build a better
Well, and the other thing is, we have set, the fall town meeting will be November 2nd,
Yes.
correct? So it's not a hypothetical. It's 5.5 months, so it's not ideal, but it's also not, it's 5.5 months. It's not even 6 months from.
Yeah, I mean, right, there is risk as.
For any article that we end up.
No, there is risk to delay of things that are needed, same as you could say, we didn't buy a drone, or we won't do this, won't do X, right? I mean, there's always risk and delay. My advice is use that time to really craft a very good, I don't disagree with the philosophical approach, but, you're hearing from the population, or if you haven't, you certainly will, from the many people who own homes that are in the 50-ish years old, and say, what are you doing to me? And you just got to anticipate and have those conversations. It's a great time for you to really, reach out, as has been said, and maybe burnish the law so you've thoughtfully picked those things.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you all
Yeah,
for your comments.
thanks. Thank you, Ben and Chrissy. Appreciate you coming on.
Is there a chance that in the fall this could get kicked down the line? I'm just curious about how that might happen, knowing that it's a full docket in the fall as well.
It's not, it's one behemoth.
It's the MBTA is a big one. We have.
I think there's going to be enough stuff that we're going to be moving that I think we'll have to give assurance that it's, I personally would give the assurance that it would be in the fall.
Your chit is in the queue now, so that, first of all, I would say that. I would say there's a zero chance that there'll be no fall town meeting. There's been times in the past where we thought we'd have a fall town meeting, like last fall, and we didn't have it. Zero chance of that, because we have a calendar mandate on MBTA. So we're definitely going to have a fall town meeting. Those meetings are 4 hours plus, and by moving the financial stuff into the spring and clearing it, that was the intent of the governance committee. I think that's the right thing to do. And yeah, I think it's the appropriate time to have that conversation.
Okay. Good. We have a.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yep. We have a lot, and we're running a little late, so we're going to run late on this meeting a little bit. But there's one other item. I do see Caitlin Watterson on, and I had communicated with her, or actually, and Kate, you have communicated with the library trustees, and they had presented some concerns about the actual TA bylaw. So in response to those, they'd send some written concerns through you, and In response, I'd reached out to town council. That was included in our packet today. I think you all have seen that. But really that they were concerned that, similar to what the Board of Health is saying, that they would like, complete autonomy, or maybe that's too strong, but that because of the Mass General laws and some of the sections they've cited, to have the custody and management of the library and the reading room and all property owned by the town relating thereto. So Ethan had responded, and that is in our packet, and basically has said that, our bylaw, as it's now been redrafted in this kind of the third iteration, we really don't, kind of have any of those concerns relative to, because we're not trying to oversee the policies of the library or what books they're buying or anything like that. All we're trying to do is have some human resource oversight and policy through the town administrator bylaw. But given that, I did want to open it up to Caitlin, if you are willing to take a couple of minutes, like 2 or 3 minutes, but to talk about those concerns. And I know you've seen the letter for email from Ethan, as well as the most updated draft of the TA bylaw. Do you still have those concerns, or are there new concerns that you might have? If you want to take a minute and tell us about that.
Thanks, Travis. And I mean, like Ben said, I think, as you know, we're hoping to come as a board to meet with all of you. So the trustees have not officially reviewed the updated policy, the updated bylaw that you sent me this evening.
Yep.
So it does not appear that the changes that we would have liked to have made appear in that. We do, as you said, we do want to maintain our autonomy. We certainly appreciate the goal of the proposed bylaw to support human resource efforts of town employees who are currently selected and managed by elected committees, but we don't think that this is appropriate for the library. It's essential that libraries remain independent in every sense. This time right now, libraries are being scrutinized, losing funding. There's federal legislation coming after libraries as well. We want to make sure our library is in the hands of our residents. We're suggesting that the library is governed like the school, independently and without oversight beyond the trustees, state, and consortium regulations that we already abide by, and feel that it's of utmost importance for the library to maintain autonomy over hiring the director and our day-to-day operations. But of course, we appreciate that you're still under revisions. I know you have very, very long meetings as it is, but we're very hopeful that you will consider our request for an exemption.
Okay. Well, thank you, Caitlin. Appreciate it. I apologize I got it to you so late in the day, but I did want to make sure I gave you anyone who's reached out, which have been a lot of different committees and groups about not only the TA bylaw, but as you just saw about the, demolition bylaw, we're getting barraged with lots of requests. So we're trying our best to take in as much information as a committee too, not just, the written stuff that we're getting. Well, thank you for that. I think we should spend a few more minutes talking about the TA bylaw, because we've certainly had some feedback from the Board of Health at the beginning of this, and we've made those revisions. Does the board? This is not the Travis bylaw. I just happen to be kind of shepherding it through. This is the select board's. It better not be.
No, it's not. I started it.
It better not be. But I know this is the board, the select board. We need to figure out what is the right approach for Carlisle, and I think we've started down a path. And the question is, you said it tonight, David. Do you want to? We're going to likely take it we are taking it to the voters.
Right.
And do we want the voters to decide, and at what level do we want to start making these compromises now? And does that assure success, or are we just kind of?
I think Caitlin's, and the library's argument, I think we have to distinguish two things, and these are two useful things that we had tonight. The broader issue that Board of Health raised, which also, any other elected, like planning board was the other, well, somebody, who's the other elected one? Planning board, right?
Planning board.
Yeah, the points that boards who are not under the purview of us, the select board, so those independently elected boards, all have a common theme, which is I need my independence. I believe personally that we can address that through what you've been saying. We're gonna make this procedural HR, and we have to work on maybe some of the language about the consultation or whatever the verb is. Well, we've made it clear that it's not about policy, so that's good. And I think we still have a little bit of work to do to clarify that, the process of hiring and firing in such a way that makes those boards feel comfortable. I do believe that there's a different issue that we created anyway, because we said schools are not included. And the argument that libraries are making is we're more like a school than like a planning board.
Right, but statutorily, schools are separate.
But so are libraries.
Well, but not on HR. I mean, that's what Ethan's thinks.
There's 0 examples of a school that's under a town administrator's authority, 0.
Yeah.
That's,
Okay, and libraries different?
it's
Yes.
mixed.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, fair enough.
Can I respond to just libraries being under jurisdiction?
Sure, Caitlin, go ahead.
Generally speaking, and I can pull statistics for you and send them over, but the vast majority of libraries are self-governing by trustees. They're a very, very, and we went over this with Kate at our February 10th meeting. I don't have the figures here. The vast majority of libraries are self-governing, even in towns with a TA bylaw. Very few fall under a TA bylaw or under a town administrator. A small number are shared responsibility, but the vast majority are still independent.
So I'm not weighing into this, but this TA bylaw does not supersede that authority. So the Library Board of Trustees has full authority of the library. This is over the management of personnel.
But the argument is, as you know, Ryan, but the argument is that the personnel, if you're going to start telling every board what they can and can't do, personnel-wise, then, what authority do they really have? I mean, that is the counter-argument, and we're dealing with that.
Right.
But at the same time, we're trying to get everyone in town kind of pulling in the same direction, being able to have some shared services and more oversight, frankly, on personnel through policies. Because right now, you have all these evening time government, or evening volunteers who are responsible for
We don't need to read, we've all gone through the argument. Okay, fair enough. I mean, I think, I'll just leave it at, we already created the dual system, because we said, we already excluded schools and the fire chief, and,
Well, the fire chief, again, that's another.
I'm just saying, anything can be overturned by the MGL. We could say everybody reports to us, right?
We could.
I mean, I'm just saying, we already created our own 2 tiers. And so, the
everyone
arguments are a little different, though. I hear libraries saying, we want to be in the school tier. I'm not hearing Planning Board and Board of Health saying we want to be in the school tier. They're saying, how can you assure me that there'll be independence on the execution of my policy? I believe we can solve for that one.
Well, the Board of Health was specific about the personnel.
Well,
They just want
Some
to
people.
say,
They weren't monolithic. I think there's a path forward in that one. I'm just pointing out that this is a slightly different argument that we created because we carved out school.
okay, but how can we, Select Board, solve that?
Make a decision. Put them in the school bucket or put them in the Board of Health Planning Board bucket. That's it.
Phone's right there.
There you go. This is a semi-uninformed opinion, so please correct me, but a lot of what we're trying to accomplish is within the operations of Town Hall. So library is different in that their staff
live somewhere else.
Doesn't necessarily need to adhere to some of the operational things of us, and they, for the most part, work independently from Town Hall. So we're not talking about, necessarily, that I'm aware of, people cross-functional between the library and planning board. So it's, qualitatively, it's a different thing, than these other boards we're talking about. The other side of the coin is, if you start making, the more exceptions you make, the more difficult it is to.
Well, you open the door for the.
So
yeah, the other
this
guys.
is one of those, I do see the qualitative difference from an operational standpoint.
Right.
But again, as you add more exceptions, you add more exceptions. And
Exactly.
But again, it's the issue that Ryan brought up earlier about HR, and how do you deal with those two? Is that the same with the, dealing with that with the library?
I hate using examples because
Yep.
I don't know there's a better employee in town than Martha, which is part of the problem. Martha's the library director.
Absolutely.
But if an employee accused Martha of something significant, to the point where a reasonable person would say that person needs to be fired, it would have to be the Board of Trustees that decided that.
Right.
So the issue is, if you have one employee claiming against another employee, you need some type of.
But Ryan, what happens over at the school? What happens if a
Jim
teacher
O'Shea.
says?
Jim O'Shea has a set of policies.
So it's more, so Jim, the superintendent is in charge of everyone. The school committee doesn't
Doesn't get
hire and
involved.
fire anyone. They hire and fire that person.
Yes.
Okay, I see. All right.
So
And that's what we're
here,
trying to do.
if you have, and it's, I'm not saying there shouldn't be people exempted, or I'm just saying that it is more, in my opinion now, this is my opinion, it is more likely that an employee would hide behind their board than an executive would
Right.
take over the authority of a board. It happens all the time.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Where
Yep.
employees use their boards as a shield so that they can violate policy, or not come in on time, or not execute their job function. And the boards are very reluctant to act, not here, but everywhere, because they don't observe the day-to-day and they don't see the interaction with other employees.
And we also heard.
He said, she said.
And who did we talk to where we were saying, they said, well, how many other towns, there's 100 bylaws, you're going to get 100 different ways to handle this, and it usually reflects the dynamics at that moment that they did the bylaw. So if you have, in our case, a well-functioning library and director and board of trustees, then those are usually exempted. If your problem's over here, then those, so it reflects I think part of what we're trying to do is something that isn't just a snapshot of how things are operating today, and it just, and
Ryan, what would prevent, though, in your scenario, if you had a conflict like that, and then you took that information because we had a policy in place, and you're the lead of that policy, and you took that information about the employees to the board and made them make a decision? What the issue there is that it becomes public, or what?
First of all,
So in the instances that it has happened here with me, the board has not acted.
if it just,
The board in question has not acted. And secondly, I disagree that they would have to conduct a disciplinary hearing. So you can delegate authority to a chair, right? You can say the chair now has full HR authority. And maybe the board's okay with that. The problem that exists is if they don't share that information with the entire board, now you have one elected board member of a board of 5 or 7 that's making full HR decisions. If they do or do not do it, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. In order for the whole board to weigh in on it, which is I think what was heard, you would have to have an executive session where you invite the employee, and now it's a full board discussion about discipline. And in my experience, boards are reluctant to.
Listen, I'm okay with, I like consistency. I can accept, I think, the argument that in the case of the schools, there is a superintendent who is ultimate authority, not the board, and I presume similar construct in the fire chief case where he's the ultimate.
that's exactly right.
Correct.
So if that's the parting line, let's keep that parting line. I mean, we need to be consistent. So that argument seems good to me. So, even though there's.
Put it to the voters and.
Put it to the voters and let's see. And the voters may reject it, the MGL may reject it, right? I mean,
Well,
I don't know.
according to town council so far, he doesn't think that anything on there that will be rejected by the MGL. By the
Okay.
MGL. But they don't, he caveats.
to me, the question is, no one's in disagreement about how we want it to work.
Yeah.
I think the concern is that, what if we get a rogue TA or someone who's doing something that is trying to impinge on the policy of the board? What's the check against that? We're talking about the check against a board, this is answering the question of maybe a board that doesn't take appropriate action. What's the check against a town administrator looking, some point in the future, trying to exert control over a board by leveraging the employees or pressuring the employees? What is the remedy for that? Is it a policy? Is it verbiage in the thing? Or is there?
The select board is the remedy, because the select board has the authority to hire and fire the TA, and if that were to.
Right. If the library trustees came to us and said, we heard from the town administrator that the town administrator was considering firing the director, and the town administrator notified us and said, I'm going to do that, and we then heard from the trustees and they said, we don't really want that, and that's not appropriate. And the town administrator, this is all hypothetical, but did that, went ahead and fired him, we would hear about it, not only from them, but other town residents, and we would say, you know what, that was not appropriate. And so we would have to take action against the town administrator, I think is how that would play out. And that's the check on that.
Assuming, or what if the select board's a bad actor and pressuring the TA, you know what I mean?
Well,
You can't
That's
legislate.
elected representation.
We've had crappy boards and you recover.
So either in some kind of FAQ, I don't know if
Isn't that true? Yeah, okay.
I don't know if it's in the bylaw itself, or if it's in a policy, or if it's in the FAQ, this is how it works. I think we need to be very explicit about, at a highlight, like what that process is, and that we're not gonna have a scenario where someone's just going in and
roughshod,
and what's the check to that? And we have to be, and I don't know where that should live. If it's implicit in the bylaw and it's in the FAQ.
Well, we certainly made it.
So we have to communicate that. And that's why it's important we get the.
So I think the two important things to communicate are the demarcation line between who got excluded and who didn't. And and it's not a matter of MGL, because we're actually petitioning to change the MGL by our action, but it's a matter that there is a staff rather than a board who does.
Right, we got the.
That's got the,
Okay,
right?
I'm good with all that.
Okay, so, but that's what has to be really explicit
It has to come out in your, in the marketing campaign.
Marketing campaign.
Yeah, okay.
And then the other one is what the recourse is if there were some rogue guy running roughshod over everybody, and
well, I
that
would say
could be
where I thought you were going with issue 2. So that's issue 2. Then issue 3 is make sure people are comfortable with the ultimate power, which is the power to fire. Make sure that the process by which, nobody's going to argue about hiring. And nobody's going to really argue.
No, I think they are arguing about hiring as well.
Well, all right, then take it both ways. The hiring and firing are the two linchpins of the control of who gets selected and how they're.
There's that word consultation that's making people.
That's the thing. So there is wordsmithing still to be done.
Or maybe that is the word.
Maybe not. But I'm saying, in terms of issues, right? So I think it's really 3 issues then, right? The parting line, make it clear what our methodology was, that we thought through the safety mechanism for a rogue TA, and then the main one, I think those two are not, the main one is going to be, well, how do you make sure, as what's his face said, thumb on the scale? What's the thumb on the scale thing?
And look, you're not going to get everyone saying we fully support this thing.
No, you will not.
The very nature of it. And so I think it's really the question for the voter.
I know, but my computer died. So.
Okay. All right.
It only lasts till 10.
But
I have it strategically set to die at 10.
Well, we are done with this discussion for now. We may need to have more time, not just on the TA bylaw, but we have to now start culling through these warrant articles.
No,
we're not. We run out of steam pretty quickly here. But
can I make 2 points?
Yes.
One, we have a meeting the week of April break. I will not be here. I can participate. The 20. So.
Okay, let's.
So
we may need to add a meeting somewhere, which I'm fine with. And if there's a way to either, I can take that call from, I'll be abroad. So, but if we can move that meeting.
Sure.
given it's vacation week.
We can,
But we should, you
Oh,
know, we
there's the
should,
22nd?
that week of the 22nd is April
Yeah.
break.
the board is here, well, except for David
God,
and
I
Barney
can't-
dropped off, but
I can't do the 29th, though.
I'm just, maybe the back half of April, early May, we just
So
add,
you have to sign the warrant by
next week.
the 15th at the latest.
So can we do
Well,
another
we-
meeting in the interim? So we have a meeting the 8th.
and then do like either that
We
week.
could either
or-
do next week a meeting, if that's helpful to get something accomplished ahead, further ahead, or after the 8th, the 10th.
The 1st?
You can meet the 15th as long as you
We
finish.
could meet the 15th.
Is that,
I can meet the 15th, just because it's tax day doesn't mean we can't meet. It's my son's birthday.
Okay, do we
Born
can we
on
get a
Easter
room?
Sunday.
I'll ask David, but the 15th is a great one. Let's just do that.
Okay, let's just put it in there.
You have to order these articles, recommend on all the articles, and
we should just have, that should be the only agenda item.
April
'Cause that's gonna be-
15th,
We don't want to give that time.
7. Add. Okay. Sorry,
Don't you think? Like,
we don't,
we probably might make that the only agenda item for that meeting, is just,
it's just the
Just the warrant.
Brian's
ATM.
nervous because that's it. And he wants to get the presses rolling here.
so you can save your recommendations for the motions book. Typically,
Yes.
you'd like to have the recommendations in the warrant book, but you have to have the
What-
order and what's in the warrant, and it's signed by the 15th.
Okay.
because right now, we would, are we slotted to do that on the 8th? Or do we take our 8th meeting and move it to the 15th, and we use the 8th to do the,
Do the warrant. Does that make you happier?
I don't know if there's
It's
items.
not me, it's.
Well,
No,
I mean,
but what is-
well, in terms of
process-wise, you
timeline
have
process.
I would
input in
say-
that.
Like, what are we doing on the 8th? Can we move that to the 15th and then move just in case something is unanswered, or we,
All right, so I'll recommend, I think you should add one on the 1st next week to just do warrant stuff. You'll have final stuff from the finance committee. Your regular meeting is on the 8th, and I would move your meeting on the 22nd to the 15th.
You want a meeting every
Okay,
week.
every week for the next 3 weeks.
We're meeting every week for the next 3 weeks?
next 2 years?
I shouldn't have gone to take
That's
the
fine with me. That's fine with me. I mean, you know,
Wrap it up.
last,
Okay.
yeah.
This is it.
All
The
right.
reason, did you hear Ryan's
What,
recommendation?
we have too much
why-
to do?
Well,
Well-
if we think about how we would go
Yeah.
through that.
That's fine.
You need a standalone warrant meeting.
Can we, and we,
So the 1st is the standalone warrant
So what are
meeting.
the meeting dates?
keep that 7 o'clock, that would be great.
1st,
Sure.
8th, and 15th.
1st, 8th, and 15th.
And then cancel the 22nd, which you
Okay,
should
so
already have.
event, select board,
Okay, so the 1st is what kind of general agenda?
Just the warrant.
Warrant,
April 1st,
Warrant.
add.
and
April
that's
Fool's Day.
7
And then
PM. Okay, the
22nd,
8th
I can
is the
delete.
order, right?
Hopefully, on the 1st, we do order
Okay.
recommendations, and then the 8th is left for anything left over.
Which would be
And
what?
our current agendas, right?
And,
I don't think you'll get through everything next week,
Okay,
so it's what's left, the 4 or 5 articles that you still have to finish.
warrant, okay. And does anyone want to start early? I know not on the 1st you can't, but does anyone find it helpful to start at 6:30?
no, I definitely don't.
You don't, okay. So we'll keep it at 7 on the 8th. And then on the 15th, what else? We have to,
Are we
we'll
keeping
vote
the-
probably the 8th to finalize it,
So the 22nd,
all the
I
agenda.
can't be there, I know
Okay.
Scott can't, and I'm assuming school vacation week, some of you might not be, but you can
Right.
still have a meeting. It's
No, the 15th. No,
yeah,
'cause
we
that-
just
that's
had
not the
3
school
meetings, so
vacation.
that's fine.
Okay, so
Right,
the
we're
1st,
skipping
the
the
8th, and the
22nd.
15th.
Right.
And the
I'm just
29th.
saying, what
The 8th
what
we
is-
already
what
have,
would be the
right?
purpose of the 15th? Is just normal business that's going to come.
the stuff we were
The
gonna
fire-
do on the 22nd.
Oh, yeah, all, okay.
Yeah.
Yep,
I-
all, we're going to have to talk about,
So, but I just
Talk about
want
more money.
to point out, though, that we won't have any meetings for 1, 2, 3 weeks, because we won't have one on the 22nd. We won't have one on
I
the
don't see the
29th.
merit of having the 15th and then not the 22nd. That seems silly.
Well, because nobody's going to be here the 22nd.
it's school
Who's not gonna be
vacation
here?
week.
I'm not gonna be
Scott's
here.
not going to be here, and
Okay.
Yeah.
Or we could do the 29th.
I can't do the 29th.
Okay, you can't do the 29th.
I've got another board meeting.
Or we could do
So how many are we missing on the 22nd?
I can call in, it's just, if it's not a conflict.
And then our next scheduled meeting would be the 13th of May.
That's probably gonna be
It's a long time.
And we said the 29th doesn't work, why?
Well, you guys could meet the 29th.
can't be
I
there.
can't make it.
Well, we have the 8th.
I haven't figured
What?
out how to be in
We're
two
not
places at
rooming
once.
May 8th, right?
Travis,
Now,
should we
I
go
might leave my other
the
one.
thing tomorrow? and
You will
try-
do it, okay. I just want to, we have everyone here for timing, okay. Thank you, Ryan.
We could
If you
do the
need one on the
6th.
29th, I could probably get here by 7:30.
We're going to at least pencil in, or we're going to do the 1st, the 8th, and the 15th, and we'll go from there and figure out afterwards.
So
I'll-
we'll
I'll
leave the
send
rest
you-
of them on the-
We're going to, yeah, leave, well,
Right.
yes, we'll leave them.
Okay.
Okay, so we have limited time because we're late in the evening. We have a TA report, and we have to
can
get
do
an
that next
update on, we have to get an update, and we have to do some committee appointments as well. Okay?
I'm going to take a
So-
break. I will be right
You can
back.
Why don't we skip the TA report? He can do it
Yeah,
next
well,
week.
there's a few important things, and there's a 250th update that we have to, I
Does
think,
any of that
because it's
go stale if we wait a week?
250th.
Yeah, in a
is-
week.
No, it doesn't. I don't have a significant 250th update. It's just
Oh,
there,
okay.
there for,
To remind us
because
that
it's
it's important.
constantly talked about.
Okay.
Do have the approval of the memorandum of agreement for the Carlisle Police Unit Local 201 contract.
Yes,
That we should do.
we have to do that.
So this is not changed from your discussion in executive session.
Right.
The MOA is binding, so if you approve the MOA, then we can approve the contract without bringing it back to you. So this was ratified by the police union, so your vote is the only thing left.
All right, let's do it.
All right, I had a question on it, though. I know no one wants that at this hour. But I did. We said that 1.5% is for 3 years and then it's done? Was that it?
Is that called, what
That
is
was the, what was it called? The PEG, or not PEG,
It's for
for the training.
post.
Post.
Not PEG,
it?
post.
Post.
Post, and it's in there, it's 1.5%, is that right?
Yes.
And it's for 3 years. And then the expectation is it goes away?
That will be in the contract, yes. We agreed on that language.
Okay, but that didn't say that in the contract, that's why I pulled it up. I gotta find find it in there. The wording in there concerned me that it wasn't, where's the 3.5%? 1.5% permanent increases to pay. That was the thing that threw me.
Yeah, but what we discussed was that there wouldn't be another 1.5 in the following year.
It's just the word permanent that made me think, when I read that,
So the footnote says, "The parties agree that the increase to base salary granted in recognition of post in this section will persist after the agreement, but that annual increases to base salary and recognition of post shall cease July 1st, 2027.
okay, as long as permanent increases, I don't know. I just wanted to point that out to everyone.
Is it permanent?
It sounded, when you
is,
say
it's not a
permanent
bonus.
increase,
Sorry?
It's not a bonus, it's a salary increase.
So what stops after 3 years?
Stop the
The
increasing.
increasing.
Oh, the increasing of it.
Yes.
But you're not gonna decrease it then 4.5% in year 4,
Right, yeah.
or whatever.
okay.
I'm moving
As
to
long as the
France
board-
before they ride me out on a rail.
Okay. You anyone want to make a motion about this?
Yeah.
I'd be happy to, hang on. Do we have a script, a motion script?
So, you're
That
fine.
one?
Permanent because the footnote at the bottom takes away the permanent increase.
Well,
I don't understand what you're,
I'm trusting that the word permanent means that it's after, that it persists in the salary, that it's permanent, not meaning it's going to increase every year, permanent in that once the contract ends, you're not then reverting the salaries back. It's a little bit, I wouldn't think you'd need the word permanent, but I'm not necessarily concerned by it.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Then,
Yeah.
And
And
given
we
that
did have a
there's-
discussion about the fact that it was going to be, the increase was going to be for 3 years.
It's in the footnote.
Yeah,
I
okay.
got that, and I had missed the footnote because I
Okay.
was focused on the word permanent, and it threw me for a loop, so.
All right.
All right, good.
We
So-
understand the intent, and we'll make sure that it's in the contract correctly.
Okay.
Because what we do is we actually do the base rate as a chart, and we'll do that for 3 years. And then you renegotiate the wages after the 4th year.
You just don't want them to say, oh, see, it's permanent, this permanent, you know, that word sticks with me.
You
All
go,
right.
see footnote 1.
All right,
I move to approve the memorandum of agreement between the town and the Carlisle Police, Massachusetts Coalition of Police Local 201, and authorize the town administrator and town council to finalize a contract memorializing the 3-year agreement as described in the memorandum of agreement included in the packet and sign on the town's behalf.
A second.
So, and when, I guess what you're hearing, Ryan, is that when you and town council memorialize this MOU, that language in there about the permanent and the post and all that will be really crystal clear, so that 3 years from now, everybody will still understand what it meant.
that's my point.
Yeah, that's,
Great. All right, so we'll vote. We no longer have Barney Arnold, so we just have 4 members present. We can do a voice vote. All in favor? Aye. And none opposed. Okay. We have, the last thing would be the appointments.
okay.
I think that's important. We should do
We have to
those.
vote 'em?
Yep.
Okay.
I just
Oh.
need Kate or
Well, I'm,
one of you, or I can do it, I
it's
guess.
not under appointments, where is it? And the T8, it's not under 8 for some reason, it should have been. ah. Not in the TA reports, right?
No, it is under 8.
It's under 8. Selvet,
What page? Or maybe it's not.
yeah, but I don't see a script. Usually there's a cover page that gives us, you know.
Appointments.
Oh, here
Move
it
to
is. I
appointments,
found it.
page
I found it.
57
I
on the
found it.
PDF.
Yeah, I found it. It was at the end, that's why.
Okay.
Okay, I move to appoint Stephen Hitton as an associate member of the Zoning Board of Appeals, term to end June 30th, 2025, and to appoint W.J. Lee as a full member of the Zoning Board of Appeals, term to end June 30th, 2027, for Steve Hinton's vacancy. I move to appoint Susan Evans as a member of the Celebrations and Veterans Committees, term to end June 30th, 2025. And I move to appoint Dale Ryder as a member of the Celebrations and Veterans Committee, term to end June 30th, 2025.
Second.
All right, any discussion? The ZBA was just because Steve's backing away and filling in. Okay,
Okay. So, great, so there were seconds, so now we need a vote.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
I move to
4
appoint
ayes,
Leif
unanimous.
Hansen to the position of van driver for the Council of Aging and Human Services, and to appoint Lois Hartley to the position of van driver for the Council of Aging and Human Services.
Second.
Okay, any questions? All in favor?
Aye. Okay, so your appointments are done.
Great.
Ryan?
All right.
All right, so Ryan, if there was one essential thing, you can say it about your report?
Just, I would encourage you to take a look at the financial policy update, preventing fraud, waste, and abuse.
Is that a new policy or a rev?
It's a rev, we added the process
Okay.
to include,
Again, I have to ask, and I don't have it in front of me anymore because my computer, but it didn't look like it was redlined.
so the only thing that was added was the process.
But I would just say once more, it is extremely difficult when you're amending policies not to include a red line. I've asked several times, I'll ask again till I get my way. Thank you.
It's going to beat you into submission.
Anything else?
TA had a red line. The TA bylaw.
I was beaten into me. I did it, and I won't do that again. I don't want to hear
You
from
should do
Dave.
that, yeah.
It was appreciated.
The whole world runs on red lines. All right.
Yes.
Well,
Okay.
It does make it easier to sort through.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. The last thing we need, we're going to skip the warrants and minutes. We'll do that next time. Liaison reports for skipping. We have community input, which we always have. I see that Mr. Lavery is on the line. Christina is on the line. Any final comments? Mary Lynn. Go ahead.
Hello. Could someone please send me the packet from the meeting? It wasn't up on the website.
Ooh,
Oh.
that's not good.
That's because it went up
I
Sunday.
have it's up there, but it's hard to find. So I will email, I have your email. I just didn't want to email you during the meeting.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. Great.
John Lavery,
Anyone else?
Not me.
Going once, twice?
no comment.
No
anyway.
mic, no comment anyway. Wow.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, John.
Thanks.
All right.
I must be doing something right.
He's saving his.
It finally
he's
worked,
saving
John.
his powder. Smart move.
All right, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're done.